form of surety is the United States, and the equity market is the best place to invest that money, and that's going to continue. That's the reason why the dollar doesn't go down, is because the rest of the world is rubbish, particularly Europe. China is in a capex decline. Where else do you put your money?
Now let's wrap up with Madame Lagarde still speaking, and the headlines are, very non-Draghi, non-Trichet-like, etc. Madame Lagarde, I'm neither a dove nor a hawk. I aim to be an owl. She's saying she doesn't want to be a monetary economist, isn't she?
Well, she's a lawyer. I mean, it's a big gamble with having her IMF experience, which you could rate either way, and indeed her previous political experience. But she is here to essentially echo what the Economic Council, European Council, thinks into monetary policy, and therefore she's going to be trying to unify both fiscal and monetary policy. She's got a very big job. What she's done is exactly the right thing, Tom. What she's done, she's kicked the ball into the long grass. She's taking a year to do a review. That's telling you she probably doesn't expect to cut rates, or hike rates, or do much really for the next year. If she can get away with it, good luck to her. It'll give her a chance to bed in.
What's kick the ball to the long grass mean?
A one year.
Is that like a soccer phrase?
It is. It's
cricket?
It's a bit of both, actually. Probably cricket, actually. But it basically means she's taking a timeout for a whole year.
I spent 8 minutes last night watching cricket, which is on 24/7 in England. For the 15th time, I still don't get it. I tried.
We don't get baseball. So, it's a complicated game.
Is it good if the ball goes way out in the field and goes over that little itty-bitty fence they have?
It does. That's a 6. That's the best you can do. If it goes along the ground, it's a 4. But the point is, you don't understand cricket unless you played it for about 8 or 10 years.
Painful. You understand baseball after the first time the 12-year-old comes inside on you and brushes your back. Marcus Ashworth, thank you so much. Greatly, greatly appreciated. Paul Sweeney in New York. I'm Tom Keene in London. Please stay with us. Futures are flat. This is Bloomberg. Good morning.
Let's get national headlines right now with John Tucker. John.
Yeah, Paul and Tom, the House Judiciary Committee set to finish debating articles of impeachment against President Trump today, with a likely party line vote to send the resolution to the floor of the House. The Senate Republicans say there's an early consensus building within their ranks for a short impeachment trial that could see the GOP-led chamber vote on a likely acquittal of President Trump without hearing from any witnesses. And growing concern about anti-Semitic incidents nationwide. This comes after Tuesday's hours-long shootout at a Jewish grocery store in New Jersey that left 6 dead, including a police officer and the 2 suspects. Authorities now say surveillance footage of the attack shows that it was targeted. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm John Tucker, and this is Bloomberg Paul.
John Tucker, thank you so much. We have a quiet day here. Futures about 20 minutes before the cash open. S&P essentially flat. Dow down 29. S&P Nasdaq down 9. This is Bloomberg.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's environment of market volatility, Pershing's Prime Services is well positioned to support the needs of hedge funds and other alternative investment managers. Whether it's customized financing or securities lending solutions, platform access, or business expansion, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and agile enough to meet your evolving demands. Pershing helps to solve the needs of clients by advocating for them, providing unwavering strength, deep supply, and award-winning service that is at the core of everything we do. Find out what sets Pershing's prime brokerage team apart.
Learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers offered by BNY Mellon's Pershing. Visit our website at Pershing.com. Pershing LLC, member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's BABBEL.com.
We just got back from a beautiful city break in Bath. Midweek is the perfect time to beat the crowds. Just an hour and a half by train from London. It was so relaxing. We headed straight for Bath Christmas Market. Oh, I can still smell the roasted chestnuts and mulled wine from the chalets. Then it was time for glow-in-the-dark mini-golf. I got a hole-in-one. Well, 3. I'm a bit rusty, okay? There's so much to do in Bath. I'm already planning my next trip.
Discover the magic of Bath this Christmas. Plan ahead at visitbath.co.uk/Christmas.
'Tis the season to be hunched over your laptop. Not on our watch. In real life, you can feel your senses and your baskets. Feel all the sights, sounds, lols, and OMGs. Wear laughing emojis on actual smiley faces. Battery is running low. Take the kids to Santa's Grotto. In real life, you can find just the right present using the most advanced search engine in the world. Your eyes. We can't in real life. Brent Cross, London. Free parking for all sleighs and cars.
On 3, our unlimited data is actually unlimited. Like for reals. None of this, we're so unlimited. But you can't watch your fave Christmas film endlessly. Or dead scroll inspo for tree decorations until 4 in the morning. We wouldn't do that to you.
We have no speed limits, no data caps, and you'll be 5G ready at no extra cost.
Ho, ho, ho.
Switch to 3, in-store or online. See 3.co.uk/unlimited-data.
Dear Dad, Merry Christmas. Thank you for always doing everything you could to make this time of year special for us. No one has a Christmas jumper collection quite like yours. Your festive spirit is...
Gingerbread latte with 2 shots and nutmeg whipped cream for Joe.
I hope it snows. I know how you love a white Christmas. All my love, Joe. Heartfelt can happen anywhere with moonpig.com. Download the app and get 20% off when you buy a card and gift this Christmas. Use code Heartfelt20. Exclusions apply.
From Bloomberg Television, here's Taylor Riggs.
Now, big tech companies used to be seen as some of the world's most desirable workplaces, but now they appear to be losing some of their luster. Facebook and Google have dropped out of the top 10 best places to work in the U.S. That's according to Glassdoor's annual rankings. And this year's top 4, HubSpot, Bain & Company, DocuSign, and In-N-Out Burger. To discuss, we're joined by Glassdoor chief economist Andrew Chamberlain. Andrew, I think the big theme that struck all of us is big tech continuing to drop out. Why? What's going on?
Well, you have to remember, this is the 100 best places to work for. So even being on the list anywhere, even if you dropped, still a great place to work. But the big story with tech is that these big companies have big company problems today. So Facebook, of course, with political scrutiny, the Cambridge Analytica scandal, it's changing what it's like to work there. It's slowing things down and introducing more politics and bureaucracy.
Facebook in particular caught our eye because we talk about that company so much on this program, dropping 16 spots. Just 2 years ago, they were number 1.
Right.
Is it really just becoming a big company?
Well, it's partly that it's changed because of the political nature of some of the controversies. The motto of move fast and break things just really doesn't hold up in an era where your product could disrupt the U.S. election.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and the Bloomberg Futures Report is brought to you by IBKR and CME Group. The new Micro E-mini futures contracts are available at IBKR at the lowest commissions. Learn more at ibkr.com/CME Mini. And U.S. stock index futures are now little changed to lower, along with European shares, as investors digest the latest signals from some of the world's major central banks and begin to refocus on trade. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures, they're down about a point. Dow futures down 28. NASDAQ futures down 11. The DAX in Germany's down about 0.1%. 10-year Treasury down 4/32, yield 1.80%. Yield on the 2-year 1.60%. NYMEX crude oil is up 0.25% or 14 cents at $58.90 a barrel. COMEX gold up 1% or $14.60 at $14.8970 an ounce. The euro 1.1142 against the dollar. British pound 1.3172, and the yen is at 108.62. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Karen, thank you so much. Well, if we think back to all the way to yesterday, we had Fed Chairman Jay Powell saying that the U.S. economy is, generally in a good position, in a good place. And today we have Madame Lagarde of the ECB saying that after some economic weakness across the EU, starting to see some signs of economic stabilization. To get a sense of kind of how this all plays out, we welcome our good friend Gary Schilling. He is the president of Gary Schilling and Company. He's also a Bloomberg opinion columnist. He joins us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. So, Gary, it seems like the Fed yesterday, maybe even the ECB a little bit today, saying things economically pretty good position. What's your take?
Yeah, well, right now, I think the scares of recession that we had earlier, and of course they started a year ago when we had a big stock market sell-off, and everybody thought the Fed was going to overdo on the tightening, and that's all kind of faded, and everything seems just dandy. Consumers are still really the mainstay of the U.S. economy, and indeed the world's economy, but at the moment there's nothing that really looks like it's collapsing, and a lot of people have eased back on any concerns about recession. Maybe that's a bad time to do that, but that's what's going on, and there aren't any clear imbalances there that say the world is about ready to crater.
So if this is a U.S. Fed that self-described as data-dependent, does the data suggest to you that they could pretty much sit on the sidelines for most of 2020?
I don't think they probably will. They if you look at job openings, are declining. Employment growth, it still is considerable, but it is at a declining rate over time. There are a number of things that suggest the consumer is under pressure. But of course, the Fed's interpretation of this is something else. And one of the things I think is very interesting about the Fed under Powell, they are backing away from a lot of the previous sort of norms. The Phillips curve, they've thrown that out. The idea that low unemployment ought to give you a big burst of inflation. They finally realized that that's not the way it's happening. Globalization and Uber and all these other things are holding down inflation. And they're even, I think, now questioning whether their 2% target on inflation is appropriate. So I think the Fed is slowly but surely adapting to an environment which is much less inflationary. And so this whole idea they worry about inflation, they can't recreate it. They worry more about deflation. They were Powell yesterday talked about basically deflationary expectations, the idea that people withhold buying when they expect lower prices, and that's a self-reinforcing cycle.
Gary, Tom Keene in London, wonderful to have you with us today. I need to congratulate you on the 400th year in a row that you've been right about the bond market. We spoke to Steve Major earlier today of HSBC, who in the trenches of market economics and fixed income has just been dead on. And so much of that is your research and the heritage that you've done over decades. Explain to our audience how rates drive lower, as Steve Major of HSBC and Bob Michael of JP Morgan suggest they will. They agree with you. Why will we see price up and yield lower?
Well, I think it's fundamentally, Tom, because you've got an excess supply world. You've got more supply than demand. You have huge production worldwide with globalization, and you don't have the spending to absorb all that output. You look at the saving rates in China, 25-30% of household incomes are saved. You've got a savings glut, an excess production world, regardless of how you slice it. When you got more supply than demand, what happens? Prices are pushed down. You have a deflationary climate, and there's a very strong linkage. As a matter of fact, there's the correlation between corporate bond yields, Treasury bond yields in the post-World War II period and inflation is 60%. So once you establish that you're in a low and declining inflationary world, you say the same thing is there for interest rates.
Gary, why are yields low with trillion-dollar deficits?
Well, because again, there's just so much money out there. It's just not being absorbed. And of course, one of the interesting things is that this has spawned this modern monetary theory. The idea is that deficits don't matter, and so full speed ahead on fiscal policy. And by the way, I think we are seeing that central bank policy is pretty much impotent. And so I think, and we've talked about this in the past time, I think we're going to see a big shift to fiscal stimulus. We're already seeing that in Europe and probably more in the U.S. Infrastructure spending is my favorite target there. But you're just seeing a situation where there's just no reason for interest rates not to go down because inflation is getting lower and lower.
Gary Shilling, thank you so much for joining us. President of A. Gary Shilling and Company, and of course a Bloomberg opinion columnist. We love having Gary on to kind of parse through what we hear from central bankers and market participants. He's joining us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. Looking right here, again, Madame Lagarde still speaking in Frankfurt, talking about the economic conditions that she sees across the European Union and the role that she foresees the European Central Bank playing as they try to stimulate some growth across the manufacturing sector and other business sectors across Europe, which have been particularly weak in the recent past. Of course, the question is how much more can the ECB do? How much more does need to come from those individual countries in terms of fiscal stimulus? That continues to be the debate across the ECB, but this is her inaugural meeting, and she is now taking questions. So we will continue to follow that throughout the day. Again, S&P essentially flat down 1. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. A surge in jobless claims last week, with applications for first-time unemployment benefits soaring by 49,000 to a much bigger than expected 252,000. But economists say the numbers reflect seasonal volatility around Thanksgiving. Meanwhile, another report shows prices at the wholesale level unchanged in November from the month before. And when food and energy are taken out of the equation, prices were down 0.2% for producers. U.S.-China trade remains in focus as investors await news on whether the world's two biggest economies can avoid new U.S. tariffs on Chinese imports. The deadline is Sunday. Nestle is selling its U.S. ice cream business that includes brands like Haagen-Dazs and Drumstick to a joint venture that it created with a private equity firm, and the price tag here is $4 billion. The move comes as Nestle's chief executive unloads slower-growing businesses like its U.S. candy operations to focus on pet food, water, and coffee for growth. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
The lifeblood of tech startups isn't just money. It's executive and technical skills, the kind of skills that companies need to build real products, and the skills that venture capitalist Chris Sugden of Edison Partners sees in the graduates that are coming out of New Jersey Institute of Technology.
The amazing thing about NJIT is their graduates, they have multiple offers on average, not just one. They're coming out with real skill sets that are immediately hireable and available to them. I think we see an understanding by the faculty and administration at NJIT that we've got to train and educate the whole student, not just their, one side of their brain. And I do think that's sort of part of the DNA today. There's practical and there's sort of academia, and merging those two together and understanding that if we're going to have our young people go get great jobs and have great successful careers, they've got to have both sides of their brain activated. And I think we see that with NJIT.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Really? We just got back from a beautiful city break in Bath. Midweek is the perfect time to beat the crowds. Just an hour and a half by train from London. It was so relaxing. We headed straight for Bath Christmas Market. Oh, I can still smell the roasted chestnuts and mulled wine from the chalets. We dropped off our Christmas shopping at the hotel. Then it was off to be spellbound at the Theatre Royal Bath. There's so much to do in Bath. I'm already planning my next trip.
Discover the magic of Bath this Christmas. Plan ahead at visitbath.co.uk/Christmas.
Today, your information is more exposed than ever. When you shop, sign in, or browse, you could be vulnerable to cybercriminals. More online threats demand more protection. That's why new Norton 360 provides multiple layers of protection, combining device security, secure VPN, password manager, and cloud backup all in one solution. Get new Norton 360, starting at $24.99 for the first year.
Millions of people are missing out by having a current account that doesn't pay them any interest on their hard-earned money. TSB offers interest to all their Plus account customers for no monthly fee. Plus, you can stop your friends and family missing out by recommending the Plus account to them. And when they switch, you'll both earn £75. Search online or visit your local branch. Terms and conditions apply.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught, it is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
Those up, dart toward the end zone. Caught, ball, touchdown.
NFL fans, hear every live game on TuneIn Premium.
Mahomes throwing off the back foot. He wants McCall. Hardman, he's got the catch at the 15. Jukes at the 10. 5, touchdown.
Today, hear the home and away call as the New York Jets visit the Baltimore Ravens at 8:20 p.m. Eastern.
It's a block, 20, 25, 30. It's a foot race, 40.
At home or on the go, hear the home and away call of every NFL game this season on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Far wing, elevates, triple bucket.
The war of the crowd. The shot clock ticks down. Will the ball go in? The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. And the replays just don't cut
to
it.
The sideline, the man bleeds for 3.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season streaming live, so you can be there when it matters most. Hear it now. Hear it live on TuneIn.
Fake in the lane, turnaround jumper from 8 feet is good on
Search
the right.
NBA today to start listening.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
And good morning, I'm Karen Moscow, along with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney. And the opening bell is brought to you by SEI. Built on advanced technologies and 50 years of innovation, SEI offers asset managers a comprehensive and flexible operations outsourcing platform. Go to SEIC.com/IMS. And the S&P 500 is little changed at the open. It's down 1 point to 3140. The Dow Jones Industrial Average down 0.1% or 36 points to 27,877. And the Nasdaq's down 0.1% or 11 points to 8642. 10-year Treasury down 5/32, yield 1.81%. Yield on the 2-year 1.60%. NYMEX crude oil up 0.25% or 16 cents at $58.91 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.9% or $13.90 at $14.89 an ounce. The euro, 1.1145 against the dollar. The yen is at 108.62. Tom and Paul.
Karen Moscow, thank you so much. Let's talk a little trade here. Sunday's a big deadline. That's the date when 15% tariffs are due to kick in on a wide range of consumer products. Chinese officials were out earlier this week saying they expect President Trump to delay some of these import duties. And no company is really more kind of paying attention here than Apple. If these tariffs go on, you could get $150 per iPhone levy if these tariffs do go in. So let's get to the details here. Dan Ives from Wedbush Securities. He's a managing director of research, covers all things Apple, all things tech for Wedbush. We appreciate him joining us on the phone. So, Dan, give us your thoughts about the impact on Apple as it relates to these pending tariffs that could go into effect as soon as Sunday.
Look, I mean, Apple's the poster child when it comes to this trade war because of where iPhones are made. And I think ultimately on the low end, 120, on the high end, 150 per iPhone in terms of what the price would go up. But ultimately, we believe they absorb it. And when they absorb the tariff, if it hits, that would be about 4% hit to EPS. So right now, that's why that continues to be a black cloud over that name. And I think ultimately a $15 to $20 overhang on the stock.
What's the sense here that, you mentioned that you think they will take the hit here to their margin and obviously take a hit to their earnings. Across your tech portfolio, do you think that's going to be the strategy as well as you look at some other companies that will likely be impacted?
Yeah, I think that would be the initial strategy because the last thing they want to do is upset the supply chain. They'll absorb it. They don't want any impact in demand. I think you'll see that across semi, plays as well. And all of our Asia checks show that absorption will probably be the first step. But then it comes down to, does Apple get an exemption if the December 15th happens? We continue to believe a likely exemption could happen if the tariffs do go into effect.
What's interesting, Dan, we've seen Tim Cook take a pretty, I think, leading role here in, kind of interacting with President Trump and the trade team. What's kind of been his strategy? Is he just simply trying to get across the point that, listen, tariffs are really a problem for the U.S. tech industry, and the U.S. tech industry is one of the, strongest industries for the U.S.?
Yeah, really, if you look at that relationship, Cook, obviously, and Apple, so strategic in the U.S., and definitely that relationship between Trump and Cook's important to explain also how Apple would be disadvantaged by tariffs versus Samsung and others. And I think really kind of putting numbers around it. And he's sort of been a pseudo-ambassador between China and the U.S., and that's why right now they're caught in the crossfire. And Cook has been a master tactician in terms of how he's handled this game of high-stakes poker.
Life's with us doing some fundamental work on Apple, whether you're a fanboy or not. Always important to speak to him. Dan, it's been just terrible for Apple. They're going to go out of business. There are 4 Christmas lists on my refrigerator in New York. The only common theme besides Dad's unlimited pocketbook is they all want the things you put in your ears. And are the little white ear thingies that Apple has, are they like as big as the iPhone? Where do they fit into the success and the endless success of this company?
Yeah, AirPods, if you look right now, they're on a trajectory to hit about 65 million units this year, and we think up to 90 million units next year. There's a shortage in terms of supply because of the demand, and ultimately, if you look, that's something that could be 4 or 5% of revenue going into next year. And they're selling like hotcakes. We continue to see what we're seeing, and I think it should ultimately be about $1 billion incremental revenue for them next year versus the street.
Right. And what's so cool, Paul, is Dan Ives has one of the $52,000 new Mac Pros.
Sure, why not?
And because he's got a $325 price target, they gave him the 4 wheels for $400. Dan, very seriously, in your wonderful update of $325 at $267 right now, you go into the 8.5 times multiple for services, and you gross up the rest of the business at a 4.3 multiple. What is that multiple at 4.3? And it seems absurdly low.
Well, you raise a great point, as always, because you have to view Apple as sum of the parts. And I think that right now the services business is worth half a trillion. And you look at that hardware piece, I think that business alone could be $1 trillion. And I think that's going to be a re-rating because we're going to a super cycle next year. And that's why Apple's a name you continue to want to own. You'll see many yelling fire in a crowded theater, even a competitor today. Every time that happens, it's a green light to own more. And we've seen it with the stock up 70% year to date.
Yeah, but I get the services and like 142% of revenue falls to the bottom line. I get the game. The hardware system is the core of what they do. The stores are packed. There's this whole AirPod thing in your ears thing, and you're putting a GM multiple on it. Why does it not deserve a higher multiple?
Well, I think it does, and ultimately that's why we've said 325 is the start. I think this is a name that could get re-rated as we go into next year, and I think it comes down to 900 million iPhones worldwide. That's the install base. That's the golden jewel they have, and I think you will see a re-rating in the stock, just like we saw this year. That will happen next year, and you can justify a $325, $350, $375 stock.
So, Dan, I'm looking at the FA function on the Bloomberg terminal. And here's some numbers that Tom can relate to. About $100 billion of cash, net cash on the balance sheet, maybe $60 billion of free cash flow every year. What does this company do with the cash?
Well, right now it's the cash flow neutral in terms of buybacks and dividends. But I do believe M&A will start to get stepped up next year. And even though it's a debate, I think content's really where they need to invest because of the streaming piece, because I think that's really the next step in terms of monetizing that install base from the streaming side. But right now, it continues to really giving it back to shareholders, and especially $60 billion in free cash flow a year. That's really the number you put an asterisk around.
Dan Ives, thanks so much for joining us. As always, we appreciate your comments on Apple. Dan Ives is a managing director, research department for Wedbush Securities, giving us the thoughts on Apple. It's going to be a very important weekend for Apple and other companies that are keeping an eye on those trade negotiations as it relates to tariffs. Again, scheduled another 15% levy on a number of consumer-facing goods and sectors, scheduled to go into effect Sunday. The question is, will President Trump defer those levies as the two sides continue to try to hammer out a kind of a longer term trade agreement, and that's kind of what's impacting.
And timely here, Paul Sweeney, into the 45-minute hour, the president just releasing, getting all caps very close to a all caps big deal with China. They want it, and so do we, exclamation point. The Dow explodes up 121 points, the VIX 14.48. Yields up 4 basis points.
Let's get national headlines right now with John Tucker. John.
Yeah, Paul and Tom, the House Judiciary Committee has taken the first steps toward voting on articles of impeachment against President Trump. A back and forth last night was a prelude to this morning's session. This is where a Democratic majority in the panel is trying to beat back a flurry of Republican amendments before sending the impeachment articles to the full House for a vote that takes place next week. Israel's deadlocked parliament failed to meet a midnight deadline to form a coalition government. That triggers an unprecedented third election in a 12-month period. Joe Biden says he would reverse Donald Trump's immigration policies during his first 100 days in office while renewing a push for Congress to pass a comprehensive immigration overhaul. Biden issued his immigration plan months after most of his Democratic rivals. That's a sign of how tricky the issue is for the former vice president. And Harvey Weinstein, the disgraced film mogul charged with rape, reached a tentative $47 million settlement with accusers, potentially putting an end to many of the civil complaints against him. At a bail hearing, a judge in his separate criminal case ordered him to post a $2 million insurance bond, up from $1 million after prosecutors say he repeatedly violated the conditions for his release. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm John Tucker. This is Bloomberg. Paul.
John Tucker, thank you so much. It only took one tweet from the president about a possible trade deal, and that popped the markets up. S&P up 16. That's all we need is a positive trade deal. This is Bloomberg.
Out here in the
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Why is delivering the best client experience a top priority at BNY Mellon's Pershing? Michelle Feinstein, Director of Client Engagement, explains.
Today's investors want a financial relationship that's on demand, customized, and leverages the latest digital technology. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, helping advisory firms and broker-dealers create great experiences for their clients is our priority. Through our integrated wealth experience, we give you a high-touch service, flexible technology choices, and expert insights, so you can deliver a highly personalized experience to your clients at every step, from onboarding to wealth planning, to performance analysis and more. And because we're part of BNY Mellon, you'll benefit from more than 230 years of strength and stability. At Pershing, we're personally invested in your success.
Visit Pershing.com to learn more about Pershing's integrated wealth experience. Pershing LLC and Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC are both members of FINRA and SIPC.
This week at Tesco, whole beef roasting joints and whole legs of lamb are half price. That's a whole lot of halves off a whole lot of wholes. What a mouthful. Tesco, delivering Christmas for 100 years. Max 2 per customer, selected stores, excludes Express, ends 31st of December.
Those up, dart toward the end zone. Caught, ball, touchdown.
NFL fans, hear every live game on TuneIn Premium.
Mahomes throwing off the back foot. He wants McCall. Hardman, he's got the catch at the 15. Jukes at the 10. 5, touchdown.
Today, hear the home and away call as the New York Jets visit the Baltimore Ravens at 8:20 p.m. Eastern.
Gets a block, 20, 25, 30. It's a foot race, 40.
At
50.
home or on the go, hear the home and away call of every NFL game this season on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slams it down.
Catch your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back, deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today. Don't want to miss a second of your NFL team's next matchup? Let TuneIn remind you. Just make sure notifications are enabled on your phone and search for your team profile on the TuneIn app. Then, find the game you want under events and tap Notify Me. We'll send you an alert as soon as live coverage begins.
Ah, finally another commercial, said no one ever. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade now and get over 45 commercial-free music stations.
Hours a day, on air and at TikTok on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
Judiciary Committee will please come to order, a quorum being present.
Articles of impeachment are being argued against President Trump today in the House Judiciary Committee. A contentious start to the meeting over procedural matters between Chairman Jerry Nadler and Ranking Member Doug Collins.
This time has become the issue.
I've made my ruling in the point of order. Does the gentleman wish to appeal the ruling of the chair?
I would like, for the sake of history, I'd like, for the sake of history, the chairman take one more minute.
Does the gentleman wish to appeal the ruling of the chair? Yes or no?
Yes.
That committee is likely to vote today to send the articles to the full House, which is expected to vote next week. Trump says he's done nothing wrong. The Labor Department said the flat reading in November on its producer price index, which measures inflation pressures before they reach the consumer, followed a sizable 0.4% increase in October. I'm John Trout.
Interconnect here.
Let's start with the national security implications of this.
Balance of Power with David Weston.
What could the United States do to help?
Weekdays at noon Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. This update is brought to you by Portfolio Analysts, powered by Interactive Brokers. Savvy investors use Portfolio Analysts to create a consolidated view of their finances and check the health of their complete financial portfolio. Sign up for free at portfolioanalyst.com. Stocks are rising. This after President Trump said he is close to a big deal on trade ahead of a tariff deadline. The MSCI All-Country Stock Index rose to an all-time high, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. The S&P 500 is up 0.5% or 15 points at 3157. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 0.6% or 154 points at 28,066. And the Nasdaq's up 0.4% or 37 points at 8692. 10-year Treasury down 13 30 seconds bonds yield 1.83%. The yield on the 2-year 1.63%. NYMEX crude oil up 1.2% or 67 cents at $59.44 a barrel. COMEX gold up 0.1% of $1.60 to $14.7650 an ounce. The euro at 1.1134 against the dollar. The yen at 108.88. The European Central Bank says it will maintain bond buying and keep interest rates low until it gets near its inflation goal. In her first news conference as head of the bank, Christine Lagarde said there are initial signs of some increase in underlying prices.
Is it satisfactory? It's certainly directionally good, but is it the aim that we pursue? No.
And she also announced that the ECB will undertake a strategic review starting in January. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Karen, thanks so much. Paul Sweeney in New York. I'm Tom Keene at Queen Victoria Street in London. And this is painful now. With us, our senior executive editor for economics, Stephanie Flanders. And I say so because the evening of Brexit, she had real leadership for this nation in describing what was going on the night of that referendum. At the time, I believe I saw her on ITV. And it's painful, Paul, because we can't talk about the election today. There's some very strict rules here. So tomorrow we'll talk to Stephanie Flanders about it.
Painful for you, not for me, I can assure you.
And I'd even like to talk about the thinking behind it, but I don't even think that's appropriate to do. So instead, good news, there's many other things to talk about. Let's talk about the president's tweet and the idea of an exploding stock market. SPX out to record highs, Dow up 150 points, very buttressed up against record highs, getting very close to a big deal with China. They want it, and so do we. I think the president's the only one who thinks it's a big deal. Am I wrong?
Well, he has waxed and waned about whether or not it was a big deal or it was a phase one deal. I mean, remember back in September, he said he was going to be a comprehensive deal. Then a few weeks later, he kind of backtracked and said it was a phase one deal, but we know that whatever gets announced, it will be the biggest phase one or the biggest intermediate deal that one has ever seen. I think it's the big reminder from the impact of this tweet is that so many markets and so many asset prices around the world are now resting on this narrative, this twisting narrative around the trade war. And specifically, we have this kind of mini deadline coming up of whether or not, the December 15th, of whether we will have those new tariffs imposed on China after so many delays.
Years ago, I had to read a lot on Bretton Woods. Barry Eichengreen kids me about it. And there was an ancient Maynard Keynes, knowing he was at the end of his time in Bretton Woods in New Hampshire, providing wisdom, resilience, and theory. And then you move forward to our multilateral trade experiment out of World War II, and there were others like Maynard Keynes providing wisdom and theory. The WTO is going down in flames. Where's the wisdom and theory right now?
Well, I think it's a very good question. I mean, you have there was John Maynard Keynes' analysis. At that Bretton Woods conference, as you know, the big battle, one of the big battles was about whether or not trade surplus countries, like China has been for so many years, should be punished or pushed to adjust in the same way that deficit countries often are. And I guess you could argue I would say this is a bit of a reach, but you could say if Keynes had had his way, maybe Donald Trump would not have had quite so much mileage over the last few years of the imbalances in trade between China and the US. But we're not there. We are here. We have seen a big change in the position of the WTO this week, written about extensively on Bloomberg by particularly our WTO reporter, Bryce Brashuk, who has shown in chapter and verse how the WTO is going to be stymied now by this US decision not to approve any new judges for the appeals process. So the WTO, as we know it, is not even going to be able to play the kind of policeman role that it has played. And we are still we do not have a kind of comprehensive approach. We have lots of tweaks and we have lots of expectation around the negotiations underway with China.
But you go to the heart of the matter. You mentioned the police patrol of it, the policing, the enforcing. I see no discussion, forget about phase one, phase 2, 3, 4, 5, of affecting enforcement that leads to mutual trust. It's like Thomas Shelling 101. it's not there, is it?
And I think that was one of the shifts that we saw and have been able to report on from the beginning of this year. The way that Donald Trump approaches these negotiations, and of course the very different noises coming out of different members of his negotiating team at different times, has led to this situation where there is very little mutual trust, where you look at these two sides and say, whatever deal they come up with, if it is remotely hard to enforce or it involves remotely any kind of mutual trust between the two sides, that is going to be lacking. So I think some of the biggest discussions, certainly earlier in the process, have been precisely around the enforcement mechanisms, and there's a good reason why we haven't seen serious people sign off on a deal.
The market 17 minutes ago, make it 18 minutes ago, flat, quiet, a bit listless. Lagarde maybe moving European rates with a higher yield, and now exploding higher. SPX through to record highs. NASDAQ 100 surges 50 points. The Dow up 182, touching a new intraday highs and really buttressed up against record highs on the Dow. 28,092 on the Dow. We're with Stephanie Flanders, Senior Executive Editor here on the topics of trade after the president's tweet, which forced this huge move higher. And now on really the interesting moment of Christine Lagarde at the European Central Bank. Let me just start with a general media question. Stephanie Flanders, how'd she do?
I think she did pretty well, but would we have, having seen her in these other roles as finance minister for France and then head of the IMF, I'm not sure we would have expected anything different. She was
exactly. I strongly agree with that statement.
She was measured. She also did. She started her questions session after having read the very traditional kind of statement, which we, as we know, didn't really go away from anything the markets had expected, to say something about how people should expect her to deal with them, how people shouldn't be hanging on every word. Yeah, so good luck with that. But also that she was going to be her own person, and she took the initiative to talk about the thing that we were most interested in, which is this strategic review of ECB policies. And I would say shifted a little bit, decided, stamped her own mark on it by saying it was going to be extremely broad, not as perhaps Mario Draghi had positioned it implicitly as just a way to kind of fix the approach to inflation, to handle the fact that inflation was just persistently too low. She said they'd be addressing inflation, the approach to inflation, but also the environment, also the need for social inclusion and inequality and all these things. So I think that was helpful for her. Maybe some of those people who really wanted this to force a change in the ECB's approach, a dovish change in the ECB's approach, well, she's not giving that to them.
And what's fascinating about this, and folks, I would suggest that Christine Lagarde possibly would say, forget about the French ministry, forget about the IMF or the ECB. Herding cats at Baker and McKenzie in Chicago a few years ago was probably the toughest thing. Just in the 2 minutes, 1 minute and a half I've got left with you, Stephanie Flanders, are we at a point yet where I happened to be with the IMF the day Guy Gopinath was announced as the Director of Economic Research, or Lagarde at the ECB, where we stop worrying about women and men because these women are of such immense, ginormous competence? Are we getting in economics at least to where we really don't care about the debate of more women involved?
I mean, maybe it's certainly becoming normalized, and just having her there for several years is going to make a difference. But I remember even in Britain, not to talk about this election, but at past elections, we had Margaret Thatcher, and there was a feeling that had ended the discussion around having a woman prime minister. Then there was a generation went by before we had another one. So I think if you have to look at the next level, and I think the fact that Christine Lagarde was the only viable female choice, arguably, and we have had a head of the IMF and we had the head of the ECB, but she's the same person, I think tells you still have to be concerned about it.
Quickly, the director of the London School of Economics, most qualified to be the Bank of England, is that another name to look forward to?
I think Manoush Shafiq, who is also known to any people in Washington for her time at the IMF, is certainly, the betting is on her if you have the kind of result that many of the polls before the polling day were suggesting. But there were actually several women who would have been extremely, the chair of the Santander, Shriti Vadera, would also have been very good. good. So that's a good sign.
Well, we're going to finish up here. Stephanie Flanders with Bloomberg Surveillance starting tonight at 10:01 p.m. London time. She'll be with us for 18 consecutive hours on the election. She runs all of our economics as our senior executive editor. Stephanie Flanders, thank you so much. Paul, in this market move, did you get that long Apple order in?
Oh, just right before the tweets came out. Boom. Just exploding in the market here, Tom. The S&P now up about 0.6%. So you're absolutely right. When that tweet came across the wires, the market just took it as a risk-on signal, and it just kind of confirms what we've seen in the past, Tom, that this market, as Stephanie Flowers was mentioning, is just really super, super dependent upon what's going on in the trade. And clearly we got a positive tweet out of the president today, and that's all it took for this market to pop. This is Bloomberg.
Christmas, a time for celebrating, unwrapping, and unwinding. Capture every moment with an epic iPhone 6S with a 12-megapixel camera. Now only $12.99 a month from Tesco Mobile, saving you £72. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Saving £2 per month over 36 months was £14.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
This week at Tesco, whole beef roasting joints and whole legs of lamb are half price. That's a whole lot of halves off a whole lot of wholes. What a mouthful. Tesco, delivering Christmas for 100 years. Max 2 per customer. Selected stores. Excludes Express. Ends 31st of December.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught, it is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
Capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Is there any bank right now in the U.S. that you think is a buy?
Do you think Chairman Powell has lost the market?
Jeff Bezos is no dope. What's the big ka-ching?
The big question, I think, for investors is free cash flow.
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
The U.S. tariffs actually hurt both China and the U.S.
Large strategics are looking to either buy or invest in innovation.
Soybeans and corn have been basically at or below the cost of production for about 4 or 5 years.
What we see more bonds, more yield.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Good Thursday morning from New York City to our worldwide audience. Coming up, we will speak to the chief economist at Fannie Mae to get the latest on the U.S. housing market. Plus, we're going to chat with our good friend Danielle DiMartino Booth of Quill Intelligence to get her thoughts on the Fed. We had a dovish Fed statement yesterday. We'll parse through that with Danielle. But first, let's go to Karen Moscow, Bloomberg News, for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Karen.
All right, Paul, thank you. And U.S. stocks are rising with the S&P 500 at a record after President Trump said he is close to a big deal on trade ahead of a tariff deadline. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. The S&P 500 is up 0.8% or 25 points at 3166. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 0.8% or 228 points at 28,140. And the Nasdaq's up 0.8% or 66 points at 8721. 10-year Treasury down 18 seconds, yield 1.85%. Yield on the 2-year 1.64%. NYMEX crude oil up 1.5% or 90 cents at 59.65 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.2% or $2.40 at 14.7260 an ounce. The euro 1.1126 against the dollar. The yen 109.04. Christine Lagarde said the eurozone's economic slowdown is showing tentative signs of bottoming out after her first policy meeting as president of the European Central Bank. The comments suggest further interest rate cuts are unlikely anytime soon. The embattled co-working company WeWork completed the first of what it hopes will be a series of asset sales by finding a buyer for Conduct Scepter, a unit that makes marketing software used by Visa and Samsung Electronics. And Boeing has agreed to partially compensate Southwest Airlines, one of the biggest customers for its 737 MAX aircraft, for damages arising from the narrow-body workhorse's grounding since March. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Colin, Lisa.
Thank you so much, Karen Moscow. Bloomberg Markets is brought to you by VentureLink at NJIT, a business accelerator offering the resources and support that tech companies need to thrive. More at njit.edu/entrepreneurship. Interesting day. We saw stocks surge on the heels and continue their surge to session highs right now on the heels of that tweet from President Trump saying that they are close to a big deal with China, and that China wants a big deal as well as the U.S. You also interestingly see Treasury yields arguably moving up even more, with the biggest one-day move in 10-year yields since November 7th. Dave Wilson, Bloomberg Stocks editor, joining us here in our Interactive Broker studios. You know, we've seen a lot of headlines, and markets have actually dampened their response to them when they have to do with trade. Not this time. Can you explain why?
Not this time. And, you know, session highs is really kind of understanding what's going on. The S&P 500 is at a record again. So we have that potential here.
But it's up less than 1%. So let's be honest.
Well, I mean, if nothing else, you know, Sunday's deadline for the new round of tariffs, if they go into effect, it's been something that people have focused on. So maybe the difference this time around is that people see the imminent arrival of those tariffs perhaps as a catalyst for something to actually happen. So, you know, when the president comes out and says something big is coming, and, you know, you have some excitement that comes out of that. And you really do have a market that looks like people are buying this one in the sense that, you know, it's the economically sensitive areas of the market, commodity producers, industrial companies, throw the financials into that group. They're leading the way here. So it's a pretty broad-based advance as well. We're looking at another record. I mean, it's sort of a continuation of what we've been seeing off and on lately.
It's interesting. We had, talk about the trade and potential deal. We had Dan Ives from Wedbush Securities on earlier today and talking about Apple, because there's a company that if those tariffs were to go into effect, for an average iPhone, that would add $150 per iPhone in tariffs in terms of the cost. And he thinks the company would eat all of that, and that would impact the EPS, according to his numbers, by about 4%, I believe, on the EPS. So there's a company that was negative early, and it just kind of popped up a little bit positive today.
And then you throw in the chip makers on top of that. Look at the day's best performers in the S&P 500. You see Broadcom, you see Micron Technology, you see Microchip Technology, you see Western Digital, all companies that certainly get caught up in whatever's going on for the likes of Apple, because, you know, they're suppliers in one way or another, either to Apple or its competitors or PC makers or whatever. But at the very least, they've been a group that have been pretty closely followed as this tariff situation has unfolded. So the idea that maybe what's coming on Sunday might not come on Sunday, or might come in a different form, or might be put off, I mean, all that lifting the group here.
I just want to say that we are seeing the gains extend, with the S&P now up more than 1%. And I will just say that adding to the gains is a report out of the Wall Street Journal that U.S. negotiators offered to cut Chinese tariffs by up to 50% on $360 billion in imports, and did offer to cancel the planned December tariffs. They did say they would reimpose the original tariff level if China fails to carry out pledges, and that this was made these offers were made in recent days as both sides seek a trade deal. So not only are we getting the tweet by President Trump, but also some reports that there are details here, actually, that would mean that we would not necessarily get those December 15th tariffs. So just explaining some of the moves, perhaps, that we're seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anything that kind of points in the direction of any sort of resolution. I mean, certainly not a final one in a sense, because there's been so much talk about a phase one deal. But anything that suggests that, you know, it's not going to get put off until next year in the presidential election, I mean, you can understand why people would look at that favorably, and the stock market reaction suggests they're doing just that.
Exactly. Well, one stock that's bucking the trend is Lululemon stock, down about almost 6% today. I guess they gave some fourth quarter comparable sales forecast that disappointed some investors. But that stock had been at an all-time high, I think, as recently as yesterday. So giving back 5 or 6% on some weaker numbers, that's not the worst thing.
Not at all. I mean, I'm just looking at this. The shares were up 92% for the year before this report came out. And you got a company, you look back at the last quarter, sales at their stores open more than a year, same store sales or whatever you call it, what you want, up 17%. And it's not like Lululemon is some brand new company with all this growth in front of it. They've been around for a while. They've dealt with issues over time. So you could argue it's a revival going on. And then there's this whole push into men's clothing that seems to be going well for them. So, put it all together.
Oh, boy, because you don't want to do yoga? I can totally imagine Paul Sweeney arriving in the office. Forget the suit.
Yes.
Full-on yoga gear.
Full-on Lululemon.
I would pay to see that.
You're probably going to have to wait for that one.
You're like, there's no money in the world. The other thing catching my eye, we did talk about Boeing, or certainly Karen Moscow talked about that as well. The semiconductor stocks. I'm very interested to see what happens in 2020. And there was actually a story how chip analysts are having a hard time getting excited about next year after the 52% rally that we saw so far this year.
And now it's even more than that.
Exactly,
if
because of what's going on.
If you look at the Philadelphia Semiconductor Index, it's now up about 56% thanks to today's gain.
Right, so there's a question of how much more oxygen is there up there, and do we have a sense of what could potentially propel them higher if this is basically as good as it gets for
You're
the
looking at the biggest advance for the SOX, as it's called, in a decade. So it's understandable that people would look at a gain like this and say, well, maybe things are going to slow down from here.
Maybe take some chips off the table. Okay. I'm exiting.
Hey, maybe you are, maybe you aren't. Macau casino owners are higher in today's trading. Talking about chips, there's a report. There's a report from Reuters that Chinese President Xi Jinping is going to announce policies next week that are designed to diversify the city's economy beyond gaming. So you see Las Vegas Sands up 4%. You see Wynn Resorts, biggest gain in the S&P 500, up 6.7%.
Are you a big gambler?
No, I am not.
Dave Wilson, Bloomberg Stocks editor, joining us here in our Interactive Broker studios, talking about chips of all kinds. I sort of apologize for the bad pun, but not really, because
that was a good one. It worked.
Yeah, whatever it takes, right? Right now, though, let's get a check on everything going on in Washington, D.C. We have Nathan Hager there with world and national headlines. Nathan.
All right, thank you, Lisa. It is Amy Morris this afternoon. That's all right. The House Judiciary Committee has started a contentious meeting to pass the articles of impeachment to remove President Trump from office. We want to go live now to Bloomberg's Irv Chapman, standing by on Capitol Hill.
Amy, the meeting began with a reiterated demand by Republicans for a hearing day with their choice of witnesses, followed by a move by Congressman Jim Jordan to cancel the abuse of power first article of impeachment.
President Zelensky, President Trump have both said no pressure, no pushing, no linkage whatsoever between security assistance money and any type of announcement of an investigation. So I hope that this committee will come to its senses.
Democrat David Cicilline then ticked off the steps the president took to get Ukraine to announce investigations that would help his reelection. And Republican Debbie Lasko again demanded the right to call more witnesses. Amy?
All right, thank you, Irv. Pending approval in the House, the Senate is expected to vote on USMCA. Bloomberg's Nancy Lyons tells us that support from organized labor may be one of the key reasons it came to the House.
Of the USMCA allows broader freedoms for Mexican workers to unionize and sets new enforcement standards. The AFL-CIO is on board, but
other unions said, we have some issues with this deal, and we're going to reserve some final say on how we feel about the deal until we see the full language.
Bloomberg Law's Jacqueline Diaz says lawmakers are not concerned.
The head negotiator for House Democrats, Representative Richard Neal, he said, we have 90% of labor on board with this, so we're just going to keep continuing on with the deal as is.
It could be next year before the deal is finalized. In Washington, Nancy Lyons, Bloomberg Radio.
Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists.
Intellectual property, one of the most valuable things we market in Asia.
I understand you're trying to rival the likes of San Francisco, New York.
We have our own brand of intellectual property.
Let's focus first on this U.S.-China trade story.
Find out why it's so valuable.
Do you need to see substance in an agreement or just that they stop shouting at each other?
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia, tonight at 6 Eastern, on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Welcome back to the Dog Show. Up next, we have Satchmo. Satchmo is a member of the Shelter Pet Group.
That's right, a group known especially for their couch-snuggling, ball-chasing, face-licking, and, of course, companionship. Now, let's see him in action.
Look how he makes eye contact with his person.
That's actually known as the treat stare.
How intuitive. And now he appears to be excitedly turning in circles.
The happy dance will come in with this group.
But really, the best way to know an amazing shelter pet like Satchmo is to meet one.
Visit theshelterpetproject.org today. Adopt.
Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies. Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
If you love them enough to listen to them practice the same song on tuba,
please be done.
Over and over and over and over and over, then surely you'll check NHTSA.gov/the right seat to make sure they're correctly buckled in the back seat.
Sounds good, honey.
Check today at NHTSA.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis.
We just got back from a beautiful city break in Bath. Midweek is the perfect time to beat the crowds. Just an hour and a half by train from London. It was so relaxing. We headed straight for Bath Christmas Market. Oh, I can still smell the roasted chestnuts and mulled wine from the chalets. We dropped off our Christmas shopping at the hotel. Then it was off to be spellbound at the Theatre Royal Bath. There's so much to do in Bath. I'm already planning my next trip.
Discover the magic of Bath this Christmas. Plan ahead at visitbath.co.uk/Christmas.
'Tis the season to be hunched over your laptop. Not on our watch. In real life, you can fill your senses and your baskets. Feel all the sights, sounds, lols, and OMGs. Wear laughing emojis on actual smiley faces. Battery is running low. Take the kids to Santa's Grotto. In real life, you can find just the right present using the most advanced search engine in the world. Your eyes. We hunt in real life. Brent Cross, London. Free parking for all sleighs and cars.
You never know where life will take you, which is why the new BMW 3 Series Touring is perfect if you're all packed up for, or escaping to. It has extensive storage and an automatic tailgate, handy if your hands are full. And it even has an optional intelligent voice assistant to help you at every turn. The new BMW 3 Series Touring. Book your 24-hour test drive today. Test drive subject to status and availability. Participating retailers only.
Christmas. A time for celebrating, unwrapping, and unwinding. Capture every moment with an epic iPhone 6S with a 12-megapixel camera. Now only $12.99 a month from Tesco Mobile, saving you £72. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Saving £2 per month over 36 months was £14.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Ah, finally another commercial, said no one ever. Visit tunein.com/premium to upgrade now and get over 45 commercial-free music stations.
Hey, TuneIn listeners, Steve Kornacki here from NBC News. I want to tell you about a podcast I'm hosting called Article 2, Inside Impeachment. It's dedicated to bringing you the latest developments on the impeachment inquiry into President Trump. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I talk to NBC News reporters who are closest to the story to break down what's new, what matters, and what it means for the 2020 election. Search and favorite Article 2, Inside Impeachment on TuneIn.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn. When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and tune in on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Far wing elevates, triple bucket.
The roar of the crowd. The shot clock ticks down. Will the ball go in? The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. And the replays just don't cut it.
The sideline, the man bleeds for three.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season streaming live, so you can be there when it matters most. Hear it now, hear it live on TuneIn.
Pump fake in the lane, turnaround jumper from 8 feet is good on the
Search
right.
NBA today to start listening.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
We're looking at records right now. Stocks jumped past records after President Donald Trump said he's close to a big deal on trade ahead of this coming Sunday's tariff deadline. We look at the numbers every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. The S&P 500 is up 1% at a record high of 3,172. That's up 30 points. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 1%, up 281. And the NASDAQ is up 1%, up 83. The 10-year is down 23 seconds with a yield of 1.87%. West Texas Intermediate crude has moved into the green as well. It's up 1.5% at 59.61 a barrel. COMEX gold's down 0.25%, 14.7160 an ounce. The dollar yen is at 109.11. The euro is $1.1122, and the British pound $1.3143. Lululemon fell by the most in more than 6 months today after the yoga wear maker's fourth quarter comparable sales forecast disappointed traders. Shares hit a record high yesterday before the earnings report. Right now, down 5.6%. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
A big question mark facing the market has been the housing market, which had been showing signs of softness, seemed to stabilize and even show signs of strength on the lower mortgage rates. But there's a question now with affordability, with the prospects going forward of uncertainty. Doug Duncan joining us right now. He is Senior Vice President and Chief Economist at Fannie Mae. Based in Washington, D.C., he trekked up to our Interactive Broker Studios today. Doug, thank you so much for being here. I want to start with a survey that you recently did of mortgage lenders. What is that telling you right now about how people feel going into 2020?
Yep, we do this survey on a quarterly basis. It covers the whole spectrum of lenders. What it's saying is that after 3 quarters of increased profit expectations, those expectations have leveled off, but at a high level. And the reason for that leveling is that there's been a burst of refinancing, which is slowing, but there is continuing to be a pickup on the purchase side. So on balance, they have stable and strong expectations for profits.
Okay, so just a bit ago, the Wall Street Journal was reporting on some trade negotiations and how the U.S. is offering to cut existing tariff rates by up to 50%. They also are potentially going to cancel the new tariffs that are set to take effect on December 15th. And we saw longer-term Treasury yields go up quite a bit. What's the tipping point for the housing market for rates to go up that would impede the progress?
Well, the question is how fast and how far. So they could go up 200 basis points or 2 percentage points over a 3-year period and have relatively slow and little impact. But if they did that in a year, like in 2018, where they rose a full percentage point, first half of 19, slow down in housing. Rates have come back down, which is why you said at the outset things have picked up or stabilized. So household budgets don't adjust. You don't get a pay raise every month. If interest rates go up monthly, you don't get the same adjustment in household income. So there's a lag on which households react on the purchase side in particular. Refinancing is more immediate because it's just a change of coupon from the difference between your existing coupon in the market, and you can act on that quickly. You're not moving your family.
So, Doug, one of the aspects of the housing market that I don't fully understand is this concept or this issue of the shortage of affordable housing for first-time buyers. Is that simply because home builders aren't buying entry-level homes, or what's really driving this? Because it seems like if there's demand from Gen X and the millennials, there should be supply to meet it.
Well, the builders are moving in that direction. Over the last couple of years, the average square footage of a new home being constructed has been falling, but it's not the core of builder market. The core of the builder market is the move-up buyer, excuse me, not the entry-level buyer. So they're moving in that direction because there is very strong demand, and in every market, if you look at the low end of the market, the price appreciation there is very strong. This is the millennials doing what they said they were going to do when they had a stable job and income. They're going to buy a house. And since 2015, they're driving it, but they're entry-level borrowers. And typically, the entry-level borrower buys an existing home with the boomers aging in place like they said they were going to, and the Gen Xers tearing the roof off, putting on a second floor because they already own the land. Those two things are keeping supply out from the entry-level borrower.
Where is there a risk of oversupply at this point? I mean, one feature of this housing cycle, people come on, they say there hasn't been overbuilding. Well, if you go to certain cities, you see cranes all over the place. And I'm wondering, where have we reached that tipping point in the United States?
I actually think the risk is more in the cost of living in that space and whether companies move, because the cost to their workers of attaining housing is higher than their ability to pay wage rates and stay profitable. So I think the risk is not overbuilding, it's a shift in demand because of a change in where jobs are going. And you're seeing that now. You're seeing some companies in high-cost markets move jobs, say to Salt Lake City or to Reno or to Phoenix, where housing is much more affordable because they're at the wage rates that they can pay and remain profitable. They simply can't find housing for people. That's why you see people like Google and Facebook and folks like that saying we're going to build affordable housing, is because it's so expensive. They at some point they can't afford to pay higher wages to house people there. That's something we're looking at from a mobility perspective, because the question is, if you start moving jobs out of a market, will prices start to come down because demand for housing will fall, right? And people start to sell. That's more the risk than overbuilding. There's not really a place where there's too much inventory. At the high end, that's a different story, because high-income households have pretty much pre-positioned themselves where they want to be and taken advantage of low rates and locked in very low rates and are unlikely to move. So that part of the market is softer than you see at the entry level.
Doug Duncan, thank you so much. We appreciate your comments, as always, on the housing market. Doug Duncan, Senior Vice President, Chief Economist for Fannie Mae, joining us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. And Lisa, continued strength across in the financial markets. The S&P up over 1% on, again, the tweet from President Trump about trade. And then, of course, that report coming out of Dow Jones and the Wall Street Journal about tariffs, rolling back not just some of the existing tariffs or some of the newer tariffs, holding off on those, but maybe rolling back some of the existing tariffs in the market, taking that as a bullish sign as that December 15th deadline for additional tariffs weighs on the market.
Yeah, negotiators are reportedly offering to cut Chinese tariffs by up to 50% on $360 billion in imports. That said, the U.S. would reimpose the original tariff level if China failed to carry out pledges. These are some of the offers that are being reported that are part of the discussions that the U.S. and Chinese trade negotiators are having. I'm Lisa Abramowitz alongside Paul Sweeney. This is Bloomberg Markets.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Stocks are soaring. President Trump said the U.S. is getting very close to a big deal with China on trade. The U.S. is due to impose a new round of tariffs on Sunday. The Federal Reserve expects to stay on the sidelines in 2020. Yesterday, the central bank kept interest rates on hold, forecasting no changes through next year's presidential election. Fiat Chrysler's unionized workers have a new contract. The United Auto Workers said 71% of their voting members approved the new deal. It's the last of 3 agreements negotiated this year by the union. Fiat Chrysler promised $9 billion in investment. And Americans are projected to fall seriously behind on their credit card bills at the highest rate in a decade as banks push a record number of people to get plastic. The share of credit card borrowers who are at least 90 days past due on their accounts will probably tick up to 2% next year. That's the highest level since 2010, according to a forecast by TransUnion. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
I'm a 40-year-old man that walked in there to get his high school diploma. It was very hard for me, but Miss Araceli, she gave me direction.
At age 47, Marco finished his high school diploma.
50% of getting your high school diploma is walking through those doors. The other 50% is doing the work.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers. In-depth
On 3, our unlimited data is actually unlimited. Like for reals. None of this, we're so unlimited, but nuh-uh, you can't watch your fave Christmas film endlessly, or dead scroll inspo for tree decorations until 4 in the morning. We wouldn't do that to you.
We have no speed limits, no data caps, and you'll be 5G ready at no extra cost.
Ho, ho, ho.
Switch to 3, in-store or online. See 3.co.uk/unlimited-data.
At Asda, packs of beer are just £12 each, including 24 bottles of Budweiser, 18 cans of Stella, or 12 bottles of Birra Moretti. Looks like you're hosting this year. Asda, let's make Christmas extra special. Selected stores and lines subject to availability. Budweiser 300ml, Stella 440ml, Moretti 330ml. Exclude Scotland drink aware.
You never know where life will take you, which is why the new BMW 3 Series Touring is perfect if you're all packed up for, or escaping to. It has extensive storage and an automatic tailgate, handy if your hands are full. And it even has an optional intelligent voice assistant to help you at every turn. The new BMW 3 Series Touring. Book your 24-hour test drive today. Test drive subject to status and availability. Participating retailers only.
Christmas. A time for celebrating, unwrapping, and unwinding. Capture every moment with an epic iPhone 6S with a 12-megapixel camera. Now only $12.99 a month from Tesco Mobile, saving you £72. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in-store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Saving £2 per month over 36 months was £14.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
At TUI, we can help you find the perfect family holiday. And with flights from 20 UK airports, we make getting there a whole lot easier. Book now with thousands of free kids' places, plus spread the cost and pay £0 deposit when you choose direct debit. Book online or in-store with one of our travel experts. At TUI, we cross the T's, dot the I's, and put you in the middle. Offer available on selected holidays for a limited time and subject to limited availability. Booking T's and C's apply. At all protected.
Introducing a new podcast, ESPN Daily. When you want to go beyond your feed, when you want to get inside the score, when you want to get behind the highlight, there's ESPN Daily. Go deeper into the stories of the moment. Get the exclusive access and insider perspective that only ESPN can give you. ESPN Daily, hosted by me, Mina Kimes. Listen now to ESPN Daily on TuneIn.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
far wing. Elevates. Triple bucket.
The roar of the crowd. The shot clock ticks down. Will the ball go in? The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. And the replays just don't cut
The
it.
sideline. The Van Fleet for three.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season streaming live, so you can be there when it matters most. Hear it now, hear it live on TuneIn.
Fake in the lane, turnaround jumper from 8 feet is good on the
Search
right block.
NBA Today to start listening.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Coming up, we'll dig more into the Chinese economy, in particular the credit market, as U.S. and Chinese negotiators get closer to some sort of trade deal. Plus, we're going to take a look at consumer credit, as that still remains the pillar of the economic expansion. Right now, though, let's head over to our own Greg Jarrett for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
Lisa, stocks are surging on trade news. First, President Donald Trump says he's close to a big deal on a trade ahead of Sunday's tariff deadline. And Dow Jones, citing anonymous sources, is reporting U.S. negotiators have offered to cut existing tariff rates by up to 50% on $360 billion of Chinese imports. The report goes on to say the U.S. would reimpose the original tariff level if China fails to carry out its pledges. Now, stocks rose yesterday as well. That was after the Federal Reserve held rates steady and signaled hikes remain unlikely. Lala Chapuli of J.O. Hambro Capital Management, portfolio manager, tells Bloomberg the Fed in 2020 is going to focus on inflation.
So the question is, can they generate inflation to change their view? Because that's probably the worst scenario, where growth picks up and suddenly you generate inflation, which then their message starts getting hawkish. Clearly, if you look at the indicators now, there's just not much of a sign of an inflation, so they're on a holding pattern.
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 at record levels is up 1%, up 30. Dow's up 1%, up 264, and the Nasdaq's up 1%, up 84. 10 years down 24-30 seconds with a yield of 1.87%. West Texas Intermediate's up 1.1% at 59.44 a barrel, while COMEX Gold's down 0.25% at 14.7120 an ounce. The dollar yen 109.09. The euro $1.1136, and the British pound $1.3147. And EIA is reporting U.S. natural gas stockpiles fell 73 billion cubic feet last week. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, U.S. and China trade certainly demanding the news flow this morning. But there's another interesting story out as it relates to China. A major Chinese commodity trader became the biggest dollar bond defaulter among the nation's state-owned companies in 2 decades. Let's get a sense of what that means for China, what that means for emerging markets. Overall, we welcome Damian Sassower, Chief Emerging Markets Credit Strategist for Bloomberg Intelligence, joining us here in our Bloomberg 1130 studio. So, Damian, give us a sense of what actually happened in China, and what do you think it means?
Sure. So Taylor Group was, at one point, I think, a Fortune 500 global company with 17,000 employees and, $67 billion in annual revenue. So, $1.25 billion of dollar bonds across 4 different issues. Some creditors opting to extend their maturities, and some opting for an exchange or tender offer, which is somewhere in the vicinity of 37 to 67 cents on the dollar. Yes, you're absolutely right. It is the first state-owned Chinese enterprise to default since 1998. So, yeah, it's a big deal.
There are 2 ways to read it. One hand, perhaps it's that the PBOC doesn't have as much ammunition to support some of these struggling state-owned enterprises. The other way to read this is they want to allow markets to operate more freely because they want to invite in more foreign investors. So if they have some sort of reliable bankruptcy process that actually encourages the oak trees and the fortresses of the world to come on in, which is it?
Well, I don't even know why you invited me on to speak about this, because you've hit the nail on the head. No, this is exactly, look, China has tons of ammunition, So I don't think it's the former, it's more certainly the latter. The issue here is the elimination of shadow banking within the Chinese financial system, right? I mean, that was a $10 trillion mechanism $10 trillion US dollar mechanism for credit extension in China that has all but gone away. I mean, if you just look at the total social financing numbers that just came out, you saw 1.75 trillion of China yuan extended last month alone, but it's really, it's very little of that is in anything other than short-term corporate loans, right? You're not seeing shadow banking anymore. You're not seeing that business-to-business corporate lending like you once saw.
What was, define shadow banking?
So it's really trust financing. It's business-to-business corporate lending. So basically, I don't want to talk about, how sophisticated and complicated the web of corporate structuring is in China. But yeah, I mean, you have parent holdcos, you have opcos, you have one lending to the other, you have all sorts of different...
And the government just said, let's pare that back?
Well, I don't think the government willingly said that. I think they politely ignored the issue for an extended period of time, right? Because really what it kind of did was it just fueled excesses. Now what you're seeing is a de-levering going on within China corporates. And look, while you are seeing, the last 2 years has been record upon record of the number and the size of China defaults locally, 80% of it is private. So I think the fact that this is a state-owned enterprise does kind of raise your eyebrows a bit, for sure.
Although you have also seen a bit of a ripple effect in the offshore market. And this is something that our Bloomberg colleagues reported, that there was the worst 1 week sell-off in Chinese offshore, in a number of months recently. And this comes on the heels of these defaults. And I'm just wondering, again, what are you looking for to determine this is not the beginning of some sort of escalating cascade of defaults?
Yeah, first things first, it's hard for me, given the ammunition that China still has. I'm talking where their level of interest rates are, where their excess reserves are, really, and how quickly they are able to, stimulate both fiscally and monetarily. It's very difficult for me to think that they would allow this to blow, but of course anything can happen. And to your point, if you want to play Black Swan, let's kind of go through it.
Let's play Black Swan.
So we'll play Black Swan. So basically,
my favorite game.
Yeah, I mean, this becomes a timing issue, like with any default. It becomes about timing, and it comes about what does it take to trigger a technical default. So in China, what does a default look like? Well, it's basically a company goes to the courts and says, I'm filing. You have 9 months to work on a restructuring plan. As a foreign creditor looking at China in the past, we always felt that we would have limited rights, that the state would take importance, that our interests would not be aligned with them, and all of this stuff. Well, to your point that you made earlier, a lot of that may very well, or the government seems to be willing to try and rectify a lot of that, to create a real bankruptcy process that treats all creditors fairly and evenly, including the state. So this is actually, I think, a good thing. I think you're spot on in that they are trying to draw on offshore creditors and draw confidence into their local system, and this goes a long way in doing that.
Damien, would you be buying Chinese high-yield bonds right now?
I would not be buying Chinese high-yield local currency bonds, but I would have to look at dollar high-yield China property credit and this at these levels for sure. I think local China rates are actually interesting just because of the spread you pick up over treasuries.
And there we go back to the story of next year. Everyone's expecting the fundamentals to remain status quo, so it becomes a coupon game. Damien Sassower, thank you so much for joining us. Damien Sassower, Chief Emerging Markets Credit Strategist for Bloomberg Intelligence. Always definitely insightful. I know that sounds glib, to basically say it's a coupon game, but that's essentially what everybody is saying. They're saying, you're going to see the economy start to lose some steam heading into year end and possibly have some volatility. But at the end of the day, you want the carry.
Yes. And that's, in a low growth world, that's maybe the play.
Yeah, except that every year people expect the year ahead, or very rarely do people say next year is going to be absolutely explosive. Right. Everything's going to blow up or be amazing. Right now, though, let's head and find out what's going on in Washington, D.C. Amy Morris is down there checking out all the news headlines. Amy Morris.
All right, thank you, Lisa. The first of two articles of impeachment sponsored by the Democrats is being debated in the House Judiciary Committee at this hour. Republicans calling for the president's conduct unimpeachable. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman reports from Capitol Hill.
Amy, the argument is a reiteration of what the two sides have been saying through weeks of hearings with public officials involved with Ukraine policy. Democrat Barbara Jackson Lee.
The president abuses power and is a continuing threat not only to democracy but to our national security.
Republican James Sensenbrenner.
I think it's obvious to all the American public that this is a railroad job. There was no impeachable offense here.
The Republicans insisted President Trump had a real interest in combating corruption in Ukraine. Amy?
All right, thank you, Irv. A Senate panel has signed off on sanctions against Turkey in response to its military offensive in northern Syria and for its purchase of a Russian-made missile system. It is now up to Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to decide whether to bring it to a vote in the full Senate. Those sanctions would hit Turkey's leaders, energy industry, and financial system. 2020 Democratic frontrunner Joe Biden says he would reverse President Trump's immigration policies during his first 100 days in office, and that he would renew legislation in Congress to pass a comprehensive immigration overhaul. Plus, Biden says he wants more aid to 3 key Central American countries. Biden issued his immigration plan months after most of his Democratic rivals. He has been criticized by his opponents and immigration advocates for his defense of Obama administration policies, which deported 3 million people. Global news 24 hours a day and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong. Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
These 40 short seconds are all it takes to enter your details into timetofine.com and locate the perfect Swiss watch. Browse and tell them which of the many thousands of watches you want to buy. They'll then put the word out to authorized retailers who'll let you know when they found it, usually within 24 hours. There's an optional concierge service too, and even a seasonal £50 off your first luxury Swiss watch purchase. Save precious time at timetofine.com. £50 off first order only. Terms and conditions apply.
Christmas. A time for celebrating, unwrapping, and unwinding. Capture every moment with an epic iPhone 6S with a 12-megapixel camera. Now only $12.99 a month from Tesco Mobile, saving you £72. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Saving £2 per month over 36 months was £14.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds, or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net.
Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Start hearing more of what you want. Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations, live commercial-free news, and every live NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL game. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour, but we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
Hey, tune-in listeners, Steve Kornacki here from NBC News. I want to tell you about a podcast I'm hosting called Article 2, Inside Impeachment. It's dedicated to bringing you the latest developments on the impeachment inquiry into President Trump. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I talk to NBC News reporters who are closest to the story to break down what's new, what matters, and what it means for the 2020 election. Search and favorite Article 2, Inside Impeachment on TuneIn.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Investors piled into risk assets and shun havens as President Donald Trump stoked optimism that he'll reach a deal with China ahead of Sunday's tariff deadline. Add that to a report from Dow Jones that U.S. negotiators have offered to cut existing tariff rates by up to 50% on $360 billion of Chinese imports. And the report goes on to say that, according to their sources, that U.S. negotiators have also offered to cancel new China tariffs set to take effect December 15th. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. Off earlier highs, but still well into the green. S&P 500 at record levels is up 0.75%, up 23. The Dow's up 0.7%, up 200. The Nasdaq is up 0.75%, up 63. The 10-year is down 25-30 seconds. The yield is 1.87%. West Texas Intermediate crude is up just under 1% at $59.33 a barrel, while COMEX gold's little changed, $14.7420 an ounce. The dollar yen 109.10. The euro's $1.1125, and the British pound $1.3126. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Right now, just to give you a sense, we are seeing a bit of those gains being paired with all the 3 main indexes up about 0.7%. Heading into 2020, we see a consensus forming that the fundamental economy will be fine, will be strong, will continue to chug along, and will allow you to clip coupons, perhaps not deliver the same kinds of returns as we saw in 2019. But really the question is, what could go wrong? And Danielle DiMartino Booth is joining us now here in our Interactive Brokers studio. She's Chief Executive Officer and Chief Strategist for Quill Intelligence, LLC, former advisor to the Dallas Federal Reserve, as well as a Bloomberg Opinion contributor. So, Danielle, what are you seeing when it comes to the fundamental economy and signs that the consensus is right, that we're just going to chug along through 2020?
Well, I think if you study the headlines, everything looks really, really good on the surface. But having worked at the Fed for as long as I did, we pay very close attention. I know Powell pays close attention. He won't say it in public, but he pays close attention to revisions to data. And what we've seen so far through July with the preliminary data is that we've had 15 consecutive months of downward revisions, again, through July of 2019. But every time we get 3 months of data out, we tend to see another 3 months of rolling downward revisions. And the Bureau of Labor Statistics will tell you that they have a very hard time adjusting at economic inflection points. And that's why at Quill, we've decided to try and look in the weeds at other types of indicators to tell us, hey, if non-farm payrolls is the most lagging of all economic indicators, what can we look at that's real time?
All right. So when we think about the economy, I think most people are just falling back on the fact that the consumer is strong. They look at the employment numbers. How do you think about the employment numbers at Quill?
So we try every week to track two things in the jobless claims data because it's very timely. It comes out on a weekly basis. We follow the number of states in the country that have rising jobless claims. So we're looking at the breadth, how far across the nation or not. Jobless claims are rising, and so far we're seeing about 57%. So over 50% of the states have rising initial jobless claims. And then we also study very closely continuing claims, knowing that just because you apply for unemployment insurance does not mean that you receive it. If you look at not seasonally adjusted continuing jobless claims, you're actually looking at hard weekly data on the number of Americans currently collecting unemployment insurance. We know Thanksgiving was a very noisy contributor to the data, so we've adjusted it on a 53-week year-over-year basis, and what we found was 10 consecutive weeks of rising continuing jobless claims in this country. That's a red flag to me.
All right, so what does that mean? Translate that for 2020.
Well, what we're seeing is an increasing trend of what the CFO Duke survey said yesterday, that 58% of CFOs are in a cost-cutting mode. A cost-cutting mode is a polite way of saying we're trimming headcount. It's not, again, something we're seeing in the non-farm payroll unemployment data, but it's definitely something that is being picked up in the weekly data.
And actually, to that point, we did get jobless claims today that rose 49,000 to 252,000 versus the estimate of 214,000. Right. So, Paul, we are seeing that exactly.
Well, yes, but I have a really hard time with these 2 weeks. I mean, you kind of have to marry the two of them because Thanksgiving again is so noisy that you can't really trust this big number either.
All right, so given that we may be seeing maybe from some of your data a little bit slowing on the consumer side with the employment, what do you do on your kind of when you think about the credit markets where you're allocating?
So I obviously live on Twitter, and the the mantra on Twitter is it's only energy. So I got so tired of hearing that I kind of dug in the weeds. And if you look at the CCC universe, which has refused to come in, and this has been, they're like, it's just an aberration, it's just energy. So 53% of the CCC universe is trading, so that's over half of the CCC universe is trading at less than 90 cents on the dollar. So of that universe, 29% is energy.
What's the other?
Other stuff. Like not
retail.
Energy.
We've seen a lot of retail.
We've seen retail. We've seen some tensions in communications. We've seen some chemical downgrades. So cyclical, but also retail as well.
But does this mean that we're going to see something broader in 2020? Or does this just mean, frankly, that there is discretion in markets and people have been disciplined during this rally?
Well, so you would want for investors to be discerning in looking at companies that might, go from CCC to A is for Apple, B is for Boy, C is for Cat, D is for default. So you would want for them to be discerning, and
say D is for dog. Okay.
But at the same time, you can't just look at the data and say it's just an energy thing because it's so much broader than that. That being said, I'm going to talk out of the other side of my mouth. The entire CCC universe, $171 billion worth of debt, is only 15% energy. So we're definitely seeing twice the percentage in terms of deeply distressed paper being in the energy sector. And from everything that we know, from the $11 billion Chevron write-down yesterday, there's still a lot of bad things going on in the shale complex. And, Oleg Malentov, my buddy over at Bank of America Merrill, him, he's been in high yield forever. He anticipates that by the end of 2020, given the 7% trailing 12-month default rate in energy, that we will be back up at 2015, 2016 double-digit default rates.
Well, broadly defined, are you seeing heightened credit quality issues in the marketplace? If not, do you think we might see them in 2020?
I think that after the turn of the year, after portfolio managers have finished all their window dressing, that we are either going to see double B spreads rise, in other words, credit stress spreading, or we're going to see CCC's spreads come down. It's got to be one or the other because we've never had a dislocation of this persistence and length in time.
What about loans? We've seen, for example, one prediction, I believe, out of UBS that leveraged loans will return a negative return next year. They'll decline 1% to 2%. Do you agree?
Yes. One of my favorite credit rating high-yield analysts who will remain unnamed basically said, look, Danielle, if you really want to go to the quick and dirty on this, if you can't access the high-yield bond market, go to the leveraged loan market. They'll loan you money. So everything I'm saying about triple Cs, you need to downgrade further if you're talking about the leveraged loan market. And Molly Smith has done a fabulous job reporting on this. We've definitely seen more than just a few instances of leveraged loans blowing up. And when they blow up, because there's no covenants assigned to them, they gap down very quickly. So I think that's going to affect recovery rates in the next credit downturn.
Danielle DiMartino Booth, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Danielle's the CEO and Director of Intelligence for Quill Intelligence, and also former advisor of the Dallas Federal Reserve and a Bloomberg Opinion columnist. You can read all of her work and that of all of Bloomberg Opinion on Bloomberg.com/opinion or on the terminal OPIN Go.
I will say it raises an interesting question because it sort of raises a challenge to the consensus heading into 2020. And this was sort of my takeaway, is that we have this belief in stability. Despite the political risk, despite the fact that we have a number of headwinds to growth. And if that gets upended, that upends the vast consensus across Wall Street. And there are some warning signs that there is not necessarily the strength to sort of keep chugging through some of the uncertainty that could come up.
Yeah, absolutely right. And Danielle, kind of calling out the labor market issue because, again, the print that we just had this week on the labor market front was very strong. And the market took that very in a bullish light. And certainly the Fed did, saying that the economy is generally in very good shape. This is Bloomberg.
This week at Tesco, whole beef roasting joints and whole legs of lamb are half price. That's a whole lot of halves off a whole lot of wholes. What a mouthful. Tesco, delivering Christmas for 100 years. Max 2 per customer, selected stores, excludes Express, ends 31st of December.
Those up, dart toward the end zone. Caught, ball, touchdown.
NFL fans, hear every live game on TuneIn Premium.
Mahomes throwing off the back foot. He wants McCall. Hardman, he's got the catch at the 15. Jukes at the 10. 5, touchdown.
Today, hear the home and away call as the New York Jets visit the Baltimore Ravens at 8:20 p.m. Eastern.
It's a block, 20, 25, 30. It's a foot race, 40.
At home or on the go, hear the home and away call of every NFL game this season on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
In the stock market and in life, everything can change from 1 minute to the next. Be the first to hear the latest money news and market trends with CNBC on TuneIn. Wherever your day takes you, listen to CNBC's full slate of programming, including shows like Fast Money, Squawk Box, and Mad Money with Jim Cramer. And when the next big business story breaks, CNBC lets you know with live updates and commentary. At the office, at home, or on the go. Search CNBC on TuneIn to listen.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Hey, TuneIn listeners, Steve Kornacki here from NBC News. I want to tell you about a podcast I'm hosting called Article 2, Inside Impeachment. It's dedicated to bringing you the latest developments on the impeachment inquiry into President Trump. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I talk to NBC News reporters who are closest to the story to break down what's new, what matters, and what it means for the 2020 election. Search and favorite Article 2, Inside Impeachment on TuneIn.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
from the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Are we on the brink of a more serious downturn?
I've always thought of the municipal bond market as a little bit of a safe haven.
Banks are going to have to start paying their depositors more.
Are we still in that mode where we're buying the dips?
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
Cash, if you're looking at treasury bills, provides a higher return than stocks and bonds here in the U.S.
If your consumer is a woman, you're more likely to be a growth company.
Longer-term interest rates can go down, even with short-term interest rates still going up a little bit.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Coming up, there's been a lot of speculation that there is perhaps some untoward trading ahead of certain tweets or market-moving headlines. We're going to dig into what regulators have found. Plus, we're going to take a look at the market move today. You are seeing that rally persist after positive trade headlines. Right now, though, let's head over to Greg Jarrett for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
Yeah, those positive headlines. Stocks moved higher. Investors were jumping on a statement from President Donald Trump that the U.S. is getting close to a, quote, big deal with China. And citing anonymous sources, Dow Jones reports U.S. negotiators have offered to cut existing tariff rates by up to 50% on $360 billion of Chinese imports. Add that to what happened yesterday when stocks were up as the Fed indicated it's standing pat. Moritz Kramer, Creditas chief economic advisor, tells Bloomberg he sees no visible reason for Fed cuts in 2020.
I think that would only occur if we really have a surprising negative economic development, which can happen any time given sort of the policy-making philosophy of this administration. But right now, there is nothing that I would see that would prompt the Fed to cut again.
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500's up 0.9%, up 27. Dow's up 0.8%, up 231. The Nasdaq's up 0.8%, up 70. The 10-year's down 27.30 seconds. The yield 1.88%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil's up 0.9%, at 59.27 a barrel. COMEX gold's down 0.25% at 14.71 an ounce. The dollar yen 109.29. The euro's dollar 11.18. The British pound $1.31.20. Tesla's lost its third general counsel in the past year. Jonathan Chang, a longtime attorney for the electric car maker who was promoted to the role in February, left the company December 6th, according to sources. Let's see if we can find Tesla is up 1.9%. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Bloomberg Markets continues now with Paul and Lisa.
Greg Jarrett, thank you so much. Bloomberg Market is brought to you by Adipar. Adipar's portfolio reporting and insights platform is trusted by thousands of wealth advisors from family offices, RIAs, and large financial institutions. Learn more at ADDEPAR.com. Green on the screen today, certainly a risk-on feel given the positive trade developments. Let's see where the action is in the world of small-cap stocks. For that, return to Dave Wilson, Bloomberg Stock Setter. Dave, what are you looking at?
A bit more green with the smaller companies than the larger ones, at least at the moment. The Russell 2000 index up a bit more than 1%. The S&P 500 higher by about 0.9%. The Russell's biggest gain belongs to Amneal Pharmaceuticals, whose ticker is AMRX. The generic drug maker has climbed 51.5%. U.S. regulators approved Amneal's version of a Merck contraceptive called NuvaRing. Assertio Therapeutics, ticker ASRT, has risen 47%. The drug developer agreed to sell Gracil, used to treat pain after shingles, to Alvogen. The purchase price is $127.5 million with royalties. Put that in perspective, Assertio, even with today's gains, market value of only $95 million. Diebold Nixdorf, ticker DBD, has climbed about 28.5%. The maker of automated teller machines projected higher earnings and cash flow next year and a return to revenue growth in 2021. Now, one of the Russell's steepest declines belongs to Lovesac. The ticker there, Love, it's down almost 12%. The furniture maker and retailer posted a wider loss for the fiscal third quarter than analysts expected in a Bloomberg survey. Sales missed estimates as well. And YRC Worldwide, ticker YRCW, is down 10%. The trucking company replaced Chief Financial Officer Stephanie Fisher with her predecessor, Jamie Pearson.
I can't get the B-52s. Love Well, I love SAC, but it's Love Shack. Anyway, Dave Wilson, Bloomberg Stocks Editor, thank you for the update on all things small caps. Right now, let's change gears a little bit to a controversial Vanity Fair article that was published a couple of months ago, I believe, that suggested investors made billions of dollars trading ahead of market-moving news and raised the question of whether government leaks were fueling big profits in the futures market. Joining us now to talk about what U.S. regulators have been doing on the heels of that, and frankly before that article, to sort of investigate this, is Matt Robinson, who wrote a story that was published today on the Bloomberg Terminal. Can you give us a sense, first of all, of just futures markets in general and how closely regulated they are for insider trading type activity?
So historically, very little. The Dodd-Frank Act changed the law. Basically, the CFTC borrowed, which is the main regulator for this market, borrowed language from the SEC, basically outlawing insider trading. Prior to that, you couldn't. It was basically front running was what they policed. So it's a very lightly regulated market and has been for some time. And to get up to speed, what the government tends to do in insider trading cases, it's mostly spotted through technology and infrastructure and analytics. So it's not so much secret messages or going through people's trash or anything like that. It's more looking at the timing of trades. So what the CFTC has been doing is trying to ramp up its expertise in the technology to make sure it can spot anomalous trading.
Well, what I like about your articles, you cite one of my favorite movies, Trading Places, in which there is some illicit trading in frozen concentrated orange juice. But what markets are we talking about here? Is it kind of all financial markets that the CFT is looking at, or is it mostly? It's mostly the derivatives associated with some of these markets, right?
Right. So for the CFTC, they have the futures markets. What was cited in the Vanity Fair article is sort of E-minis, which is a popular instrument to bet on sort of a big bets on where the market is going. Like for instance, today on trade moves. So that's kind of that's sort of the area that the CFTC is focusing on.
What have they found in terms of legit justification for claims that there has been insider trading and profits made on this?
Well, they looked at the allegations of the Vanity Fair article and didn't come to the same conclusions. But that they are looking at this obviously broadly. I mean, they brought a case last year about a trader at a firm that gave inside information to a friend and traded on it, basically taking client information and telling a friend to trade on it. So there have been cases in this space, but not sort of to the scale that the Vanity Fair article pointed to.
Well, how about just tweets coming out of Washington, out of the White House? President Trump's tweets move markets every day, including today. Sometimes he'll tweet about you're going to like these jobs numbers kind of thing, or things like that. I mean, how do you regulate that?
It's difficult. I mean, when it comes to insider trading, you have to prove duty, right? Duty of keeping the information to, the government body, or, for the jobs report, or for instance, a drug approval or something like that. So, it would be, it's a new landscape for the government, policing this, these kind of markets.
William Cohan, who is the author of the Vanity Fair article, said to you in an email, "I reported what traders were telling me. I am pleased that regulators looked into it, and I am ecstatic they didn't find anything." Was he skeptical?
I think he tweeted a bit later today that he's a bit skeptical. But I mean, these are, it's hard to look at.
There's skepticism and sarcasm written all over that, or is it just me?
I guess you'd have to ask him.
William Cohen, please call in. I would like to ask you whether there was sarcasm and skepticism embedded in that statement.
Right. I mean, it's hard, I think, sometimes for the public looking at, trades in real time. You're often looking at a house through a keyhole. So it's hard to say, to draw definitive conclusions on these markets.
Matt Robinson, thanks so much for joining us. A fascinating story here. Matt Robinson's financial regulation reporter for Bloomberg News, joining us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio with a story that I think is really fascinating. You think about some of these derivatives and futures markets and how they move and how the news flow today, with the technology, including Twitter, really whips around markets.
Well, and there's a question here, right? When you have predictably market-moving types of headlines and they keep whipsawing, how do you even monitor where people could be potentially profiting, especially if they're profiting in small ways, if it's not sort of, a ka-ching type of moment? Right. It's an interesting question. Certainly plenty of conspiracy theories across the board. Good that the regulators are looking into it. And William Cohen is ecstatic that they didn't find anything.
Exactly. But yeah, it must be brutal for to be a regulator, whether it's the SEC or the CFTC, and trying to police this, given all the noise that's out there in the market and the volatility that we see daily. Just from Twitter and plus the other social media. So fascinating story. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington D.C. for World and National Headlines with Amy Morris. Amy, what do you have?
All right, thank you, Paul. The first of 2 articles of impeachment sponsored by the Democrats is being debated in the House Judiciary Committee, with Republicans calling the president's conduct unimpeachable. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman reports now live from Capitol Hill. Irv.
Amy, the president's lack of interest in Ukraine, except for promoting an investigation of the Bidens, defied U.S. national interest. Democrat Hakeem Jeffries said,
"The United States is probably the only thing standing between Vladimir Putin and Ukraine being completely overrun as part of Putin's fantasy to reconstruct the Soviet Union."
Republican Matt Gaetz.
Russia, the residue of impeachment theories passed and failed. I mean, I heard all these folks come by that are part of the diplomatic corps, and they sure seem to believe that we ought to do everything for the Ukraine, but if the president disagrees with that, it is not impeachable conduct.
The 2 sides also debated whether this impeachment was more or less valid than previous cases. Amy?
All right, thank you, Irv. And President Trump is also criticizing 16-year-old climate activist Greta Thunberg. Bloomberg's Martin DeCaro with that story.
The president is weighing in on Time's choice for Person of the Year. On Twitter, he called Thunberg's selection ridiculous. Says Trump, Greta must work on her anger management problem, then go to a good old-fashioned movie with a friend. The Swedish teens become a symbol of a growing movement of young climate activists. She led weekly school strikes in Sweden that inspired similar actions in about 100 cities worldwide. In 2015, Trump attacked German Chancellor Angela Merkel for ruining Germany, as he put it, after she was named Person of the Year. In Washington, Martin DeCaro, Bloomberg Radio.
Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. I'm Amy Morris.
Full breakfast, cup of coffee, whatever you have in the morning, have it at daybreak.
What's the outlook for the pound if there is another election?
Nathan Hager.
The U.S. could still delay those tariffs?
And Karen Moscow.
It is the 5th major industry player to make some sort of zero commission offer.
Bloomberg Daybreak.
Bloomberg has more from Hong Kong.
Weekdays at 5 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Melissa from Michigan. I work an extra part-time job serving lunch at my child's school, but I still can't afford to put food on our table.
Daniel from California. Choosing whether to pay the rent or pay to fix the car to get to work doesn't leave us with much at all. Now we can't even pay for meals.
Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
My mother was always very active and independent, and she was familiar with her neighborhood. But one day, she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual. She wasn't even really sure where she was at.
It's important for you to talk to someone about it. I felt so much better after my son told me, Mom, we'll figure it out.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
We just got back from a beautiful city break in Bath. Midweek is the perfect time to beat the crowds. Just an hour and a half by train from London. It was so relaxing. We headed straight for Bath Christmas Market. Oh, I can still smell the roasted chestnuts and mulled wine from the chalets. Then it was time for glow-in-the-dark mini-golf. I got a hole in one. Well, 3. I'm a bit rusty, okay? There's so much to do in Bath. I'm already planning my next trip.
Discover the magic of Bath this Christmas. Plan ahead at visitbath.co.uk/Christmas.
'Tis the season to be hunched over your laptop. Not on our watch. In real life, you can fill your senses and your baskets. Feel all the sights, sounds, lols, and OMGs. Wear laughing emojis on actual smiley faces. Battery is running low. Take the kids to Santa's Grotto. In real life, you can find just the right present using the most advanced search engine in the world. Your eyes. We can't in real life. Brent Cross, London. Free parking for all sleighs and cars.
Today, your information is more exposed than ever. When you shop, sign in, or browse, you could be vulnerable to cybercriminals. More online threats demand more protection. That's why new Norton 360 provides multiple layers of protection, combining device security, secure VPN, password manager, and cloud backup all in one solution. Get new Norton 360, starting at $24.99 for the first year.
I've always loved a kitchen experiment, especially smoothies. I've blended all sorts of mad combinations. Strawberry and charcoal, broccoli and chocolate. Not my best, that. But when I test blenders in the Witch Lab, it's not about flavour, it's about performance. Our tests use proper tough stuff, hard ice, strong veg, rough nuts. And the blenders that can hack it are the only ones we recommend for your kitchen.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Millions of people are missing out by having a current account that doesn't pay them any interest on their hard-earned money. TSB offers interest to all their Plus account customers for no monthly fee. Plus, you can stop your friends and family missing out by recommending the Plus account to them. And when they switch, you'll both earn £75. Search online or visit your local branch. Terms and conditions apply.
Owning your own business doesn't automatically make you an accounting expert. So it's good to know that when you choose to manage your money with Sage, you don't just get great business management at your fingertips, you get great local support too. Anytime, anywhere. Simple solutions from Sage. Trusted by over 1 million British businesses to manage finances, operations, and people. Find out more at sage.com/automate.
On 3, our unlimited data is actually unlimited. Like for reals. None of this, we're so unlimited, but nuh-uh, you can't watch your fave Christmas film endlessly, or dead scroll inspo for tree decorations until 4 in the morning. We wouldn't do that to you.
We have no speed limits, no data caps, and you'll be 5G ready at no extra cost.
Ho, ho, ho.
Switch to 3, in-store or online. See 3.co.uk/unlimited-data.
Dear Dad, Merry Christmas. Thank you for always doing everything you could to make this time of year special for us. No one has a Christmas jumper collection quite like yours. Your festive spirit is...
Gingerbread latte with 2 shots and nutmeg whipped cream for Joe.
I hope it snows. I know how you love a white Christmas. All my love, Joe. Heartfelt can happen anywhere with moonpig.com. Download the app and get 20% off when you buy a card and gift this Christmas. Use code Heartfelt20. Exclusions apply.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Investors are piling into risk assets and shunning the havens as Donald Trump stoked optimism that he'll reach a deal with China ahead of Sunday's tariff deadline. The pound is down as UK voters went to the polls. Dow Jones is citing sources as saying U.S. negotiators have offered to cut existing tariff rates by up to 50%. Of $360 billion of Chinese imports, adding to the trade news. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is now up 0.8%, up 24. The Dow's up 0.8%, up 221, and the Nasdaq is up 0.7%, up 56. 10 years down 30 seconds with a yield of 1.89%. West Texas Intermediate crude is up 0.8% at 59.24 a barrel, while COMEX gold's down 0.3% at 14.7020 an ounce. The dollar yen stands at 109.30. The euro $1.1112, and the British pound $1.3122. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
What a year 2019 has turned out to be after that very, very disastrous fourth quarter of 2018. The question now, everybody's looking towards 2020. What can we look for? Simply a low, mid-single-digit return year or something different? To kind of get a sense of 2020, we welcome our next guest, Adam Coons. He's a portfolio manager and trader at Winthrop Capital Management, based in Indianapolis, but joining us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. So, Adam, again, we had a fantastic year in 2019 across most asset classes. The investment-grade bonds, I think, returning over 14% this year, just extraordinary. How are you positioning it for your clients for 2020?
Yes, you're right. It was kind of hard to mess up this year. All asset classes were loved except for one. That was the CCC levered loan. CCC is up only 4.5%, maybe less today with the rates up. So for us, with spreads as tight as they are, depending on what index you look at, spreads are roughly 110. The Bloomberg Barclays is 102. So spreads are tight, yields are low. For us, what we've done is create a little bit of a barbell, a credit barbell in our strategy. So we still like triple Bs on the short end of the curve. So 5 years and in is where we're putting the income, putting the spread product, and then out the curve, we're moving up in quality. Sometimes it's, a high-grade corporate piece of paper, but for the most part, it's treasury. So we're keeping duration pretty much neutral. But we are definitely splitting our bets on where we're taking credit risk.
So this seems to be the consensus that we keep talking about heading into 2020 is that rates will remain relatively range-bound. And yet today, if you look at the market response to this news about a possible removal of some of the tariffs as well as a ceasing or not implementing the December 15th ones, you're seeing the rally in stocks come off a bit, and you're seeing Treasury yields continue to move up, with 10-year yields actually up the most today since September. What does this tell you in terms of the risk that we could see a material increase in benchmark U.S. rates?
Yeah, so it's funny because you've got a lot of headlines. You've got Powell out yesterday, you've got Lagarde out this morning, and the pun is intended here. There's a tweet that trumps all of that, and the markets move significantly in one direction, right? So you've got rates out, like you said, 10 basis points. The risk is that over the last couple years, you've seen the duration of indexes move out significantly. So right now, credit index is right at 8 years. The ag is almost at 6 years. So that's probably something that investors really haven't been monitoring as much. Maybe they're investing to that benchmark and haven't realized that over the last couple of years, they've taken on more and more of a duration bet that they didn't really intend to. And to me, that's the biggest risk is that reach for yield, that reach for duration. You're giving up convexity now as rates move lower, to get into the weeds a little bit. But I don't think investors have really realized that's what's happening to them.
So you mentioned the central bankers, Powell and Lagarde, speaking in the last 24 hours. Did you hear anything that surprised you one way or the other from either?
Not really. I mean, we're all aware of where the market is, where the economy is, the fact that inflation is just not really there. And there's no reason to increase rates right now. And as long as we don't see any really significant increase in the economy, whether it's global or domestically, there's not going to be a reason to increase rates. I think that the Fed will continue to be beholden to the market. Anytime you see a slip, I think you're going to see this push to decrease rates even more.
There's also another consensus that it is the year of picking up coupons, and if you go into developing markets, that you're going to get a bigger coupon than if you stay in the developed ones. Do you agree?
I mean, sure, you can pick up yield.
Sure, but is it okay? Do you like emerging markets credit? Sorry, I will reframe the question.
So a lot of that story comes down to the dollar. You have to take a dollar stance if you're going to do that because they have dollar-denominated debt, and so that once again they're beholden to our market. So what I would say is that right now, because the U.S. is still the strongest market, you're going to see the dollar continue to strengthen. It's weakened a little bit over the last couple months. I think we're going to see the dollar stay where it's at or get a little stronger. So ultimately, no, I don't see it. On a relative value standpoint, I do not see emerging market debt as a place to be. If you're looking at a risk to reward, same deal. You're picking up more yield, but there's significantly more risk. To me, it's just not worth it right now.
So, Adam, looking through your recent research note, one of the stocks you guys are highlighting, it was an interesting one, Boeing. Yeah. Certainly a lot of hair on that one. Stocks underperformed this year. What's your Boeing call?
So we like the debt as well. The bonds are out 25 basis points, maybe a little bit in from its wides. But on the stock side, you've got a company that, let's be honest, they had a hiccup, right? They're going to fix that with a 737 MAX. However that happens, they change the name. They're going to sell. There's a massive backlog. It's really impossible for airlines to change, because you go to Airbus, you're going to wait another 5 years. You're at the back of the line, right? So we see this getting resolved, like many things that we're waiting on getting resolved, right? This will get resolved as soon as it does. You're going to see the orders pick up again. People have a recency bias, right? Everyone thinks that no one's ever going to fly on a 737 MAX ever again. Let's get real. How many people open the pamphlet when they get in a plane and see what plane they're on? We got one.
I'm raising my hand.
But I think most people will forget about it in a couple of years like they do everything else, and we'll see the stock rally.
And full disclosure, I was very scared of flying when I was a little girl. I've gotten over it.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that.
You've flown with me, so you know that. But honestly, I do check. But not that I do anything about it.
I agree with Adam. I'm going to hop on a 737 MAX the day they...
I still hop on the 737 MAX, but I check and then I make sure to have an extra drink. Adam Coons, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Adam Coons, portfolio manager and trader at Winthrop Capital Management, joining us here in our interactive broker studios. Coming up, we're going to talk about books and some of the books that you should be reading, in particular having to do with confirmation bias, which I think has been an issue a lot of people have been thinking about when it comes to investing. I'm Lisa Abramowitz alongside my co-host and colleague Paul Sweeney. This is Bloomberg Markets.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. President Trump said the U.S. and China are very close to signing a big trade deal, sending stocks to new records on expectations that a tariff increase planned for Sunday will be called off while talks progress. Haagen-Dazs, Skinny Cow, Dreyer's, Edy's, and Nestle Drumsticks. Some of the brands that make up Nestle USA ice cream. And now Nestle is selling it. The buyer is a joint venture called Frenary, created by private equity firm PAI Partners and Nestle itself. The price tag, $4 billion. Citigroup said gold has more room to rally. The reason, there's little possibility of the Federal Reserve raising interest rates in 2020. Gold is set for its biggest annual gain since 2010. And shares of Lululemon are lower. The yoga wear maker reported another quarter of double-digit sales growth. But that wasn't enough to boost a stock that's already almost doubled this year. A Citigroup analyst has warned that the market expects Lululemon's results to be flawless. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
Listen, as a hiring manager, I've got to tell you, the best job candidate isn't always the typical candidate. Sometimes they're a grad of life.
Meet the grads of life. Young adults of unique determination and experience. An ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
Sometimes the best candidates aren't the ones you're used to.
Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
'Tis the season to be hunched over your laptop. Not on our watch. In real life, you can fill your senses and your baskets. Feel all the sights, sounds, lols, and OMGs. Wear laughing emojis on actual smiley faces. Batteries running low. Take the kids to Santa's Grotto. In real life, you can find just the right present using the most advanced search engine in the world. Your eyes. We hunt in real life. Brent Cross, London. Free parking for all sleighs and cars.
On 3, our unlimited data is actually unlimited. Like 4 reels. None of this, we're so unlimited. But nuh-uh, you can't watch your fave Christmas film endlessly. Or dead scroll inspo for tree decorations until 4 in the morning. We wouldn't do that to you.
We have no speed limits, no data caps, and you'll be 5G ready at no extra cost.
Ho, ho, ho.
Switch to 3, in-store or online. See 3.co.uk/unlimited-data.
The S in Audi S-Line stands for many things like sporty, stylish, streamlined, and now seductively priced. Like the new Audi A4 S-Line, which you can now have from £359 per month, £2,154 initial rental. Test drive one at your local Audi centre, but you'll have to be swift. The offer ends soon. Search Audi S-Line. Audi, Vorsprung durch Technik. With 48-month contract hire, 10,000 miles per annum, 18s and over, subject to status. Damage charges may apply. No ownership. Ordered by 31st of December 2019 from participating centres. Audi Financial Services. Visit audi.co.uk.
At Asda, packs of beer are just £12 each, including 24 bottles of Budweiser, 18 cans of Stella, or 12 bottles of Birra Moretti. Looks like you're hosting this year. Asda, let's make Christmas extra special. Selected stores online, subject to availability. Budweiser 300ml, Stella 440ml, Moretti 330ml. Exclude Scotland drink aware.
Dear Dad, Merry Christmas. Thank you for always doing everything you could to make this time of year special for us. No one has a Christmas jumper collection quite like yours. Your festive spirit is...
Gingerbread latte with 2 shots and nutmeg whipped cream for Joe.
I hope it snows. I know how you love a white Christmas. All my love, Joe. Heartfelt can happen anywhere with moonpig.com. Download the app and get 20% off when you buy a card and gift this Christmas. Use code Heartfelt20. Exclusions apply.
Want TuneIn to remind you when the big NFL game is about to get underway? Be sure notifications are allowed on your phone and search NFL on the TuneIn app. Find the game you want to hear under events and tap Notify Me. We'll let you know exactly when it's time to listen in for kickoff.
Heading for the net, scores! Along the goal line, Marshawn scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
You can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today. Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Coming up, we're going to talk to our good friend Barry Ritholtz, Bloomberg Opinion, and to be quite honest, I have no idea what we're going to talk about, so stick around and we'll find out together. Plus, we'll speak to Shannon O'Neill, the Council of Foreign Relations, get her thoughts on the USMCA trade deal. But first, let's go to Greg Jarrett of Bloomberg News for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
Thank you, Paul. S&P did rally to an all-time high after the president tweeted he's very close to a deal with China, boosting confidence among investors that additional tariffs will not take hold this coming Sunday. And then we also got reports that the U.S. is offering to cut current levies in return for fixed agricultural purchases by China. Howard Shore, Shore Capital founder and chairman, tells Bloomberg he sees one major geopolitical risk to markets coming in 2020.
I think the tension is really going to be increasingly over the next 5 to 10 years how this America-China thing plays out. It's not just about trade. It's really about strategic power and who controls what.
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is up 0.7%, up 20. The Dow's up 0.7%, up 195. The Nasdaq's up 0.5%, up 38. 10 years down, 28.30 seconds with a yield of 1.89%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is up over 1% at 59.37 a barrel. COMEX gold's down 0.25% at 14.7170 an ounce. The dollar yen 109.26. The euro $1.1117. And the British pound $1.3133. Need a bit of a boost? Pepsi plans to offer a new way to get that jolt of caffeine. In April, the snack and beverage giant will start selling Pepsi Cafe in the U.S. The drink blends the taste of coffee and cola and nearly doubles the amount of caffeine in a regular Pepsi. It'll come in 2 flavors, original and vanilla.
Drink less.
Pepsi's up 0.2%. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
I think this is going to be my favorite game to play heading into your end, which is let's name the consensus and then decide whether or not we think it is likely or not. Barry Ritholtz joining us here to play the game with us. We should have like a soundtrack for it.
I like it. I like this game.
All right. Barry Ritholtz, Bloomberg opinion columnist and host of Masters in Business on Bloomberg Radio. Also the founder of Ritholtz Wealth Management joining us here in our interactive broker studios. First consensus, the economic fundamentals will stay strong and it will be a coupon clipping year in 2020. Go.
So we have the industrial sector in a recession already, and admittedly that's a much smaller part of the economy than it used to be. I hate the phrase uncertainty. I think it's a completely misused
Go ahead
phrase.
And use it anyway.
But you do have company executives saying, we don't know how the trade and tariff war is going to be resolved. We don't know where our supply chain is going to be hit next. And that causes a slowdown in all sorts of capital investment from trucks and rails to new plants and ships. And it's a self-inflicted wound. And as long as this just continues as long as Lucy keeps pulling the football away and Charlie Brown keeps being a sucker for it, 2 feet forward, 2 feet backwards, we've made no forward progress with that. So, an okay year, maybe 2.25 GDP. Maybe towards the end of the year, things start to soften. Hard to tell much more than a quarter or two out.
So this is, in other words, yes, he agrees with the consensus.
Is that the consensus? I honestly don't know.
Yeah,
I would think so. All right, another call here. The short-term Fed repo market could, in fact, be a big problem for markets.
Yeah, no, that's the silliest thing I hear. Everybody is the old line is, to a man whose only tool is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. To the people who missed the financial crisis in 07, 08, 09, and now they have a little PTSD and they're just fearful of the next crisis. They're scared of their own shadow. Everything they see is the next boogeyman that's going to cause the next market to get slashed in half. And so everything becomes, we had a liquidity crisis during the 08-09 period, so now everything else is going to lead to a liquidity crisis. First of all, I don't imagine the Fed would tolerate more than a little bit of a problem, and you saw their last response when things got gummed up. This is a problem with the plumbing, not a systemic problem. Admittedly, 1987 was a plumbing problem that spun out of control, but this just doesn't look or smell like an 08-09 disaster.
We should have like a noise for rejected, consensus
right.
Rejected.
Yeah.
All right.
There's a television show that does that already. I don't know if its ratings are any good.
Well, I want to get to the next issue, which is developing markets versus developed markets. Developing markets have that people expect them to perform better pretty much across asset classes next year versus developed ones. Go.
Well, EM is having a fantastic 2-day run. This is the best 2-day run we've seen in emerging markets in a long time. The gap on valuations between the U.S. and the rest of the world, the U.S. and EM, or we won't even talk about frontier markets, is as large as it's ever been. And if you believe in mean reversion, you would say lighten up on the U.S., buy emerging market. However, you could have said the same thing every year for the past 5 years, and you would have been wrong. And full disclosure, I've been wrong about this for a couple of years. My only caveat is I've said I will look like an idiot for 2 or 3 years and then look like a genius. So now we're in year 2 of looking like an idiot, recommending EM. Who knows how much longer it could go? We're starting to see signs that the rest of the world is catching up to the U.S.
Okay, so that's with consensus.
I think so.
Well, I was early and wrong. Early, and as all traders know, early equals wrong. But I'm doubling down. My cognitive dissonance doesn't see anything separate from what I've been seeing. The U.S. is fully valued. I won't even say richly valued. The rest of the world is pretty cheap. If you want to buy value, you look outside of the U.S. If you want to buy momentum, straight to the S&P 500.
The Fed's going to do nothing in 2020.
So I don't buy. So here's the consensus. The consensus is quantitative tightening and rising interest rates throttled back the economy, and that's what caused the Q4 2018 20% drop. And I think that's utter nonsense. It is a classic after-the-fact explanation that nobody said, oh, by the way, we're too tight and we're going to see a big drop beforehand.
Other than the president.
Well, he's been saying that since the day he got sworn in. After saying Janet Yellen should be ashamed of her low rates previously. Right. So I don't believe that we're too tight. We are still very close to emergency footing. I'm not a big fan of higher rates, but I do like the idea of the Fed normalizing rates, normalizing their balance sheets. I've been saying this for, 7 years now. It's time for the Fed to stop their extraordinary accommodation, which effectively has the result of driving asset prices higher and not a whole lot more. No one is not buying a house, not buying a car, building a plant because Fed fund rates would go up to 3 or 3.5%.
Barry Ritholtz, thanks so much for joining us and playing our game with us. Bloomberg opinion columnist and host of Masters in Business. That's on Bloomberg Radio. He's also founder of Ritholtz Wealth Management, joining us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio.
Consensus throwdown.
Consensus throwdown. That could be it. We'll take that to Anthony from SPAR to see what he thinks. So we'll see. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. to Amy Morris for world and national headlines. Amy, what do you have?
All right, thank you, Paul. The impeachment under the Constitution is based on committing high crimes and misdemeanors. Democrats and Republicans on the House Judiciary Committee have been debating now the definition. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman is covering the meeting on Capitol Hill and joins us live. Irv.
Amy, Republicans chided the Democrats for flirting with the charge of bribery, but not actually making that charge in their articles of impeachment. Congressman Steve Chabot.
The entire argument for impeachment in this case is based on a charge that is not a crime.
Republican Louis Gohmert.
There were no crimes.
Democrat Eric Swalwell.
How about the highest crime that one who holds public office could commit? A crime against our Constitution. The president committed the highest crime by abusing his office, cheating in an election, inviting foreign interference.
The committee will take a party line vote on the two articles, and the debate will be repeated next week on the House floor. Amy?
All right, thank you, Irv. 2020 Democratic frontrunner Joe Biden says he would reverse President Trump's immigration policies during his first 100 days in office. He'd also renew legislation in Congress to pass a comprehensive immigration overhaul. Plus, Biden says he wants more aid to 3 key Central American countries. Biden issued his immigration plan months after most of his Democratic rivals. He's been criticized by his opponents and immigration advocates for his defense of Obama administration policies. Federal workers will receive 12 weeks of paid parental leave under landmark legislation passed by the House. The Senate is expected to approve it next week. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Today, your information is more exposed than ever. When you shop, sign in, or browse, you could be vulnerable to cybercriminals. More online threats demand more protection. That's why new Norton 360 provides multiple layers of protection, combining device security, secure VPN, password manager, and cloud backup all in one solution. Get new Norton 360, starting at $24.99 for the first year.
Those up the dart toward the end zone. Caught ball, touchdown.
NFL fans, hear every live game on TuneIn Premium.
Mahomes throwing off the back foot. He wants McCall Hardman. He's got the catch at the 15. Jukes at the 10. 5. Touchdown.
Today, hear the home and away call as the New York Jets visit the Baltimore Ravens at 8:20 p.m. Eastern.
Gets a block, 20, 25, 30. It's a foot race, 40.
At home or on the go, hear the home and away call of every NFL game this season on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Start hearing more of what you want.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations,
Live commercial-free news,
and every live NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL game.
Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Hey, TuneIn listeners, Steve Kornacki here from NBC News. I want to tell you about a podcast I'm hosting called Article 2, Inside Impeachment. It's dedicated to bringing you the latest developments on the impeachment inquiry into President Trump. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I talk to NBC News reporters who are closest to the story to break down what's new, what matters, and what it means for the 2020 election. Search and favorite Article 2, Inside Impeachment on TuneIn.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Introducing a new podcast, ESPN Daily. When you want to go beyond your feed, when you want to get inside the score, when you want to get behind the highlight, there's ESPN Daily. Go deeper into the stories of the moment. Get the exclusive access and insider perspective that only ESPN can give you. ESPN Daily, hosted by me, Mina Kimes. Listen now to ESPN Daily on TuneIn.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
Cutting for the net. Scores! On the goal line, Marshawn scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today. To LeBron, slam dunk.
The NBA is on TuneIn Premium. Each week, TuneIn picks an NBA game you just can't miss. The Miami Heat are taking their talents to Texas to take on the second-year phenom, Luka Doncic, and the Dallas Mavericks.
Pulls back, trying to make it 11-2.
This Saturday, the Miami Heat are at the Dallas Mavericks. Tip-off is at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Search NBA on TuneIn to follow your favorite NBA team today.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Investors piled into risk assets and avoided havens. This all as President Donald Trump stoked optimism that he'll reach a deal with China ahead of Sunday's tariff deadline. The pound dropped as UK voters went to the polls. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. Stocks are well off earlier highs, but still into the green. The S&P 500 is up 0.6%, up 19. The Dow's up 0.6%, up 163. And the Nasdaq's up 0.4%, up 36. The 10-year is down 28.30 seconds. The yield 1.89%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is up over 1% at $59.37 a barrel, while COMEX gold is down 0.25% at $14.71 even per ounce. The dollar yen, 109.26. The euro, $1.11.15, and the British pound, $1.31.28. Saudi Aramco shares rose for a second day, but the oil giant failed to hold on to the $2 trillion valuation that Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman had long targeted. Stock climbed 4.6% to close at 36.80 rials in Riyadh, finishing at just 1.96 trillion. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, a couple of days ago, the House passed the USMCA bill. Mexico, Canada, the U.S., that trade bill, the new NAFTA, if you will. The question is now, when will the Senate approve it as well? To get some details, we welcome Shannon O'Neill. She's a senior fellow for Latin American Studies at the Council on Foreign Relations and also a Bloomberg opinion columnist. Shannon, thanks so much for joining us. I guess there's some conflicting signals from Senator Mitch McConnell about whether this USMCA bill can get ratified in the Senate this year, or is it going to be pushed into next year? What are your thoughts?
Well, he has said that he wants to wait until after impeachment proceedings go forward, which would be in the new year. And also, he hasn't been personally a big fan of the changes to NAFTA, the new NAFTA called the USMCA. But whether it will probably be pushed into next year, but I would highly doubtful that the Republicans would turn down this bill, especially since the Democrats and the Trump administration have finally gotten to a yes.
Shannon, let's talk about the winners and the losers from this deal. Can you give us a sense of what we've learned so far as people parse through the details?
Well, I think there are political winners on both sides. The Trump administration Trump during his campaign said he was going to renegotiate NAFTA, and lo and behold, he has renegotiated NAFTA. On the same time, the Democrats have wins there. They said that they would fix the bill, that they weren't on board with what had originally been negotiated, and they got, particularly Mexico, but also Canada, to move on some things. So they can go back and say they have a win on labor issues and environmental issues and the like. As we look at the U.S. economy, I think American companies in general, there's some wins there. Definitely internet companies, Amazon.com, there are wins there, both because you'll see more e-commerce go into the other countries. You have the taxes, what they call de minimis, the amount of money you're allowed to send duty-free has increased in both Canada and Mexico. And also the internet and tech companies fought back some changes that were suggested by Democrats to increase sort of their obligations in terms of responsibility about what goes back and forth across the border. So the internet side are winners. The losers, actually the biggest loser was the pharmaceutical industry. Things that they had wanted in USMCA that had been in the first round got stripped out in the second round. So I think they came out the biggest losers this time around in what looks like will pass through the U.S. House and Senate.
Shannon, some critics are suggesting that this is, much ado about nothing, that the new NAFTA is not a whole lot different from the existing NAFTA, and then all we've done is taken a year here to kind of, bandy about and get political, and but nothing really's changed. Is that fair, do you think?
So there are some updates in this version of it. And NAFTA was passed back in 1993. The world was a really different place back then. So this version has different regulations for e-commerce and digital flows of information that wasn't even on the horizon really back in the 1990s. So that is new. We see updates in intellectual property rights, some other types of things that most of which were frankly included in the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which was a big Obama administration initiative with the countries in Asia as well as Latin America. So some of that stuff is new to NAFTA. Some of the things that just came in this latest version, sort of round 3, in terms of labor oversight and enforcement and some environmental issues, those are a step up from the first NAFTA. So I think there are changes there. But overall, what all of this negotiation has done is kept the agreement between the three countries, the United States, Canada, and Mexico, to continue trading and working with each other.
When we heard the press conference announcing this deal and that all parties were going to be signing onto it, there was discussion about some heated phone calls with screaming on both ends of negotiators, particularly with the U.S. and Mexico. I'm wondering, after these negotiations are basically done and dusted, what's the relationship going to be like between the U.S. and Mexico?
Well, when I've talked with people who have negotiated trade agreements with all sorts of countries, there's always a few moments where heated debate happens. So I think the screaming was not totally out of the ordinary when people get to this. But as we look especially at U.S.-Mexico relations, the trade issues have now been taken off the table, and I think those in Mexico are breathing a huge sigh of relief. Companies that operate on both sides of the border, at least now they know what the rules are going to be going forward. But we have other issues on the agenda with Mexico and the United States, and the two biggest ones are migration, not just Mexicans coming north, but particularly Central Americans that have been coming through Mexico and coming to the United States seeking asylum from violence and other problems in their countries. And the other issue is security. Mexico has seen a huge increase in homicides and other violence, and we've seen a couple high-profile cases involving U.S. citizens where they've been murdered. And so there are tensions there between the countries that will be the next big issues on the agenda for the two of them.
Shannon, so both the White House and Congress, particularly the Democrats in Congress, taking credit for this deal, saying it's a good deal for America. How do the Canadians and Mexicans view it? Do they view it as a good deal for them?
You know, a deal is a good deal for them. So I think both countries were playing a bit defense to make sure that NAFTA stayed together, the three countries stayed together in a trading bloc. There are some things in this that are good for both of those countries, and a lot of these updates to the old NAFTA will be good for all three countries and their economies. The Canadians actually in this latest round came out ahead. Some of the things that they had not wanted to do that they'd given as a concession, particularly some of the pharmaceutical issues that got stripped out, the Canadians won on that because they had not wanted it in the first place. But overall, I think this is a small update. It brings some new stuff into the overall mix. It has some wins and loses in particular sectors that we've talked about, but overall, what it does is keep NAFTA. And for Mexico and Canada, that is what they wanted in the first place.
Shannon, just real quick here, I'm wondering what your outlook is just in general on Mexico. I know Mexican assets have had kind of a rocky year so far. What are you looking for in 2020?
Well, Mexico has seen a huge decrease in investment, both foreign direct investment, but also domestic investment. Some of that was NAFTA uncertainty, whether or not this deal is going to get passed. But a lot of it comes from the domestic policies of the López Obrador government. So as I look forward, I look to see what he is going to be doing. What is he going to be doing in terms of the energy sector and the contracts that might be with private companies, whether domestic or international? How is he going to treat other sectors of investment in infrastructure that would help the manufacturing sector? Like, those are the things that, in the end, I think are going to determine whether Mexico grows faster than it has been or if it continues to fall into recession.
Shannon O'Neill, thank you so much for being with us. Shannon O'Neill, a senior fellow for Latin American Studies at the Council on Foreign Relations. She's also a Bloomberg opinion columnist joining us by phone. Really interesting to see the shakeout as people try to determine the winners and the losers. Interesting that the pharmaceutical industry is being pinpointed as the big loser here.
Yeah, I like the way Shannon characterizes this deal. It's essentially an update of the existing NAFTA deal to take into account some of the changes that have occurred in the economy and society since the early 90s.
Yeah, and we're hearing that from a number of people. Yep. Just to give you a sense of what's going on in markets, you're actually seeing those gains get paired quite a bit, with the NASDAQ now just up 0.3%, down from more than 1% earlier in the trading session. I'm Lisa Abramowitz alongside my co-host and colleague Paul Sweeney, and this is Bloomberg.
In addition to Bloomberg Radio, you can catch the latest news and biggest newsmakers on Bloomberg Television. Look for us on DirecTV Channel 353 or check your local listings.
Ah, Christmas, a time for sharing gifts and laughter, and photos and videos. Make the most of it with a SIM-only deal packed with data from Tesco Mobile. Like a 10-gig SIM for just £13 a month. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile today. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 29th of December. 12-month contract and unlocked 4G-enabled phone required. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night. And somehow I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here. Testing mattresses in the Which Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use. And the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Hey, can't watch the big NBA game because your life's just too busy? I've got some news for you. TuneIn Premium is the answer to all your problems. Hear every home and away game live or on demand everywhere you go. Just search NBA to listen.
Don't want to miss a second of your NFL team's next matchup? Let TuneIn remind you. Just make sure notifications are enabled on your phone and search for your team profile on the TuneIn app. Then, find the game you want under events and tap Notify Me. We'll send you an alert as soon as live coverage begins.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour. But we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters in New York to our TV and radio audiences worldwide, I'm David Weston. Welcome now to Balance of Power, where the world of politics meets the world of business. We're going to start today with Anna Edgerton of Bloomberg News. She's down in Washington. We've got a lot to talk about with trade and impeachment. Let's start with trade. We had the president tweeting out this morning that we're very, very close to a really big deal both sides wanted. What do we make of that, Anna?
Well, we're, of course, looking forward to that December 15th deadline when tariffs are supposed to go up on products from China. So the question is whether or not the United States is going to decide to, put off or even reduce those tariffs. And that would be a signal that we'll look at going forward to the final stage of the negotiations for the Phase 1 trade deal. If those tariffs are not put in place on December 15th, that's a good sign for these negotiations going forward.
Okay, what about a good sign for USMCA? Where does that stand now? The Democrats say they have an agreement. Why aren't we getting it turned into a legislation?
So it does take a little bit of time to write the implementing bill. And Nancy Pelosi warned us previously about this, saying that, it will take a little bit of time to actually write the bill that Congress needs to pass. The good news is that everyone appears to have signed on to the principles of the changes that were made at the insistence of Democrats. We still do expect that vote next week in the House of Representatives, although Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell over in the Senate said they're not going to take it up until next year.
And in the meantime, there's this thing called impeachment going on. They're having hearings. Normally you think that would be historic. Everything would grind to a halt. But it seems like Congress is just going on about its business. Is that what's happening?
Well, that is a really important point for Nancy Pelosi to say that they're not just investigating the president, that they're not as impeachment obsessed as Republicans have accused them of being, that they are still legislating and trying to accomplish big things like passing this USMCA. There has been pushback from some progressive Democrats that Nancy Pelosi is working with President Trump to pass this trade deal and give him a political win before the election next year. But it's really important for her to give her moderate members who are going to be campaigning next year as well in swing districts to be able to say, look at what I accomplished. I don't care. If the president is a Republican, I'm going to do important things for the American people.
Okay, Anna, thank you so much for your reporting from Washington. That's Anna Edgerton, our very own. And now we want to turn back to the USMCA. That's the successor agreement to NAFTA. Welcome now one of the House members who will be voting on it soon, we believe. He's Congressman Michael McCaul of Texas. He's Republican ranking member on the Foreign Affairs Committee. He comes to us from Capitol Hill. So, Mr. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. Let's start with the fact that there were some changes made in the USMCA as negotiated by Ambassador Lighthizer. How do you stand with those changes? Some Republicans seem to be not very comfortable. Are you comfortable with what was done?
Yes, I am. I think the two sticking points was labor issues in Mexico and also the patents on pharmaceuticals going from 10 years to where they are today. Look, this is an important piece of legislation, a treaty that we need to put through the Congress. So we're talking about, basically, we're talking about 12 million American jobs, about $1.2 trillion for the American people. My home state of Texas, Mexico is the largest trading partner, and it's about 1 million jobs for Texas and about $137 billion. So this is, a lot's been made about giving the president a political win. I would argue this is not, should be held hostage by politics. This is a win for the American worker, first and foremost, and it's not a win for and it's it's very imperative that we pass this as soon as possible.
Well, as soon as possible, exactly, Congressman. We hear what you say from both sides of the aisle right now. This is a win for Americans, the American worker, no question about it. You talk about holding a political hostage, then why does Senator Mitch McConnell, Majority Leader, say we're not going to even get to it until after an impeachment trial? Why don't we just get it voted through on the House and the Senate and get that benefit for the Americans?
Well, we're extending our time up here to next week. We do have this thing called impeachment going on. We do have to fund the government next week. So there's a lot on the plate. I do think you're going to see this thing pass the House next week, and then it will be taken up by the Senate. By all accounts, from what I'm hearing, the impeachment process in the Senate will go rather quickly. McConnell's indicated with no witnesses it's going to go fast. And I do think USMCA will be on the fast track in the Senate.
We also have news today out of the White House and elsewhere about U.S.-China negotiations that maybe we're getting very, very close, according to the president, to what he calls a big deal. Maybe we'll be rolling back some of the tariffs. How do you react to that?
I think very positive. I think you have to look at it in two phases. The first phase is really the really trade imbalance of hundreds of billions of dollars. That is the first phase, I think, is the most likely to get an agreement on. And what your prior guest talked about was this deadline in December that I think the president will defer and not impose additional tariffs, may actually relax those tariffs in exchange for China agreeing to import more of our ag commodities. This would be a huge, significant step forward. The second step deals more with the intellectual property theft, the espionage piece that I think is going to take a longer time to negotiate. But if we can get this first phase done and we can pass USMCA, the impact on the American economy and the stock market will be really overwhelming. And I think it's going to put every American's pension, everyone's 401k in a very strong position going into next year.
We're talking with Representative Michael McCall of Texas. Representative, you've been quite outspoken on the Hong Kong situation. I wonder whether you think it's fine to go ahead with a deal that, as you suggest, might actually roll back some of the tariffs. There was reporting from Bloomberg earlier today to that effect. Do that at the same time we haven't got the Hong Kong situation resolved.
We're very clear on our position with Hong Kong. We stand with freedom and democracy over dictatorship and tyranny. President Xi, I think, is misbehaving. We stand with the people of Hong Kong on this one, but we also want a trade deal with President Xi, and that's the balance that the president's trying to coordinate right now. But he also he did sign our bill that we passed out of my committee on the Foreign Affairs Committee. And we're always going to stand with human rights and freedom-loving people over tyranny and dictatorship any day of the week. I don't think that's going to impact, hopefully won't impact this trade agreement with China, certainly the first phase.
And finally, Congressman, you mentioned the funding of the government that needs to get done next week if we're not going to actually have the government shut down. There was talk there would just be a continuing resolution to sort of kick the can down the road, as they say, into the new year. Do you believe at this point there can be an omnibus solution here that will really get the appropriations done before the end of next week?
Yeah, I'm hearing from the appropriators we'll probably have several spending bills on the floor to keep the government open. A CR, I hope, is not going to be the likely situation. CRs are the biggest reason I oppose CRs. While I don't agree with shutting down the government, CRs greatly impact our military. They hurt our readiness, and we need to keep our military strong in what is a very dangerous world right now.
Okay, Congressman, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. That's Congressman Michael McCall, Republican of Texas. And he is, of course, the ranking member of the Foreign Affairs Committee. Now it's time to get a check on the markets and how they are reacting to today's top stories. Joining us is Abigail Doolittle. Now, Abigail, you promised me we would not talk about trade today. I think you're going to break your promise.
I think I have to break that promise. It's amazing what one tweet can do. Of course, President Trump earlier tweeting that the U.S. and China are close to a deal, and we just saw stocks take off at the highs, up more than 1%, the best day in more than a month. It's interesting, though, David, not as high now. In fact, well off of those highs. A big piece of that is Apple. Take a look at those shares of Apple, down 1%. Now, on Monday, there was a cautious commentary from Daniel Ives at Needham on Apple around trade. Today, Credit Suisse is out saying that the iPhone sales are slowing in China. Yesterday, here on Bloomberg TV, we had one of the Street's top technicians, David Keller, saying that it looks like these shares are ready to pull back on technical reasons. Basically, there are higher highs, which tells you some folks are really liking the stock, but the momentum is falling. Right now, it is falling.
So technical may be the answer to my question, because I would have thought Apple would particularly benefit because there was concern with the new tariffs to go into effect on the 15th that they would hit Apple particularly. And if there's easing attention, they'd benefit maybe more than others, but maybe there are technical aspects that you always understand so well.
Well, it probably is quite a bit of technical selling, both for the major averages and for Apple, because you're right. If those tariffs didn't go into place, that would really benefit Apple, because they were set to perhaps take a $150 tariff hit per iPhone. There was some talk that there could be some sort of an exemption there because President Trump and CEO of Apple, Tim Cook, had met. But that could have been a benefit. But this stock, David, take a look at this, up 70% on the year, the best year since 2009. Again, that bargain basement buying, traders just going in there and scooping this thing up with both arms. Now they're taking some chips off the table, especially on some of these technical signals.
Well, and it's hard not to cash in some of those chips when you're up 70%.
Yes,
that's pretty
absolutely.
tempting. Okay, many thanks to Abigail Doolittle for that check on the markets. Coming up here, impossible. That's the view Senate Majority Leader McConnell has on the Senate taking up the USMCA anytime soon. We talk with his colleague, Senator Kevin Cramer of North Dakota. That's coming up next. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Psst. We've got something to tell you about the Honda Jazz. We know it looks small, but inside, it's really big. That's why we've created the small but big Jazz event, where you can get 0% APR representative and 5 years complimentary servicing on all grades until the 31st of January. The Honda Jazz, the small car with the big offer. Visit your local dealer to find out more. Honda dealers are credit brokers, not lenders. Finance provided by Honda Finance Europe, authorized and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. Terms and conditions apply.
On 3, our unlimited data is actually unlimited. Like for reals. None of this, we're so unlimited, but you can't watch your fave Christmas film endlessly, or dead scroll inspo for tree decorations until 4 in the morning. We wouldn't do that to you.
We have no speed limits, no data caps, and you'll be 5G ready at no extra cost.
Ho, ho, ho.
Switch to 3, in-store or online. See 3.co.uk/unlimited-data.
This week at Tesco, whole beef roasting joints and whole legs of lamb are half price. That's a whole lot of halves off a whole lot of wholes. What a mouthful. Tesco, delivering Christmas for 100 years. Max 2 per customer, selected stores, excludes Express, ends 31st of December.
It's headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. A move higher for the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ. Although we are well off our session highs, investors are piling into risk assets and shunning havens as President Trump stokes optimism that he will reach a deal with China ahead of Sunday's tariff deadline. S&P 500 index rallied to a record after the president tweeted that, quote, he's very close to a deal with China, boosting confidence among investors that additional tariffs will not take hold Sunday. The rally faded as the day wore on without any fresh developments. 10-year Treasury yield spiking 10 basis points. The dollar rose. S&P up 15. That's a gain of 0.5%. The Dow up 108, up 0.4. NASDAQ up now by 23, a gain of 0.3%. We've got the 10-year down 24.30 seconds. The yield right now 1.87%. Gold down 0.3%. Recapping stocks higher. S&P up 15, up 0.5%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
There's a lot of changes made by the Democrats
that Republicans wish had not been made. But in order to get this otherwise very good agreement through the House of Representatives, they probably had to be negotiated. So it was compromised in a way that I feel that the overall thing is very, very good. And we may lose some Republicans because of it, but it's going to get through the United States Senate probably easier than it gets through the House of Representatives.
That was Senator Chuck Grassley speaking yesterday about the fate of USMCA in Congress. For more on the renegotiated trade deal, we welcome now one of his colleagues in the Senate, Republican caucus. He is Senator Kevin Cramer of North Dakota, coming to us for Capitol Hill. So, Senator, welcome. Are you going to be one of those Republicans he may lose?
Oh, no, certainly not. USMCA is so important to North Dakota. North Dakota is a lot like Iowa, except we actually border our northern neighbor, Canada. We do about $6 billion of exports a year, 88% of which are with Canada and Mexico. So that's, Mexico, Canada, very, very important to North Dakota. And, if perfection is the enemy of better, then we don't get very good deals. So, nobody's king, and 535 people can't negotiate a perfect deal.
So if this is something that's good, if not perfect, good for Americans, and we hear that from both Republicans and Democrats, why not get it into effect right away? I mean, time's a waste in here. You get more benefits. And as you know, we have the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, saying, we can't take it up until after we're done with the trial and impeachment. We're well into the new year, aren't we?
Well, that's right, but we do have this thing called the law that we have to deal with, and the calendar automatically kicks into impeachment once we receive the articles of impeachment. We might be able to take Christmas off, so that's a complicating factor. However, only speaking for me now, I would stay through this weekend, next weekend, up to Christmas, if that's what it took to get USMCA done. It's that important, in my view, to get that done, because it's got more value than even just the $6 billion from North Dakota. It's obviously important to American jobs. It's important to America's economy, but it's also added leverage in the other trade deals. Trade deals have an escalating impact, a cascading value, if you will, as we're dealing around the world. I think it really strengthens the president's hand with China, as an example.
We're talking with Senator Kevin Cramer of North Dakota. So if this bill is that successful, that good, how fast can you get the impeachment trial done? There's been talk about whether there'll be any witnesses called or not. What's your sense of that as one of the jurors, as it were, in that trial?
Yeah, so my sense of it is, and in my opinion, maybe more importantly, is that I don't think we ought to aim for a big, long trial. As much fun as it might be to call witnesses that provide exculpatory evidence and testimony for our president, I think the weakness of the Democrats' hand in the House, evidence coming over, we could hear their evidence and we could hear the rebuttal by the president's lawyers, I think, and go right to a vote on both articles. The one is completely contrived, and I think that getting on with it, getting America on toward the election, that's only going to be 10 months later, I think that has more value, frankly, than exonerating the president. And I also believe that, politically speaking, that the president's coming out ahead on this whole process as I thought he would in the first place. So, I don't feel the need for a long trial. And I think there's a growing sentiment for that, actually.
Senator Cramer, let's turn to a somewhat different subject that sometimes can divide the White House from including Republicans up on the Hill, and that is possible sanctions against Turkey and Russia. Where do you stand on that?
So I tend to support sanctions on Turkey and Russia. I will never forget that when we first got here, I was still in the House at the time. The president, of course, was elected and sworn in, and we did those sanctions on Russia, and I immediately ended up on a trip to Kazakhstan to explain that it's not aimed at our allies in the region. I know that these things get complicated, but I think that with certain actors and certain circumstances, it's best to look out for America's national defense, and I think that sanctions are appropriate. But I also understand that diplomacy is complicated, but I think we need to do something.
Yeah, you put it so well, Senator. Diplomacy is sometimes complicated. Are you concerned that, ironically, sanctions on Turkey may drive Turkey, an ally, more into the arms of the other possible subject of sanctions, that is Russia? Because certainly President Putin is courting President Erdogan.
There's no question about that, but and Turkey's obviously an important NATO ally. They're the second largest army in NATO. But we also can't just look the other way when they commit egregious acts. And frankly, in terms of driving them into the arms of Vladimir Putin, as some people put it, to some degree, that ship's sort of sailed. And I think unless we add some strength to our relationship with Turkey, we're just letting them, we're facilitating that courtship rather than fighting back a little bit.
Senator Kramer, you're on the Armed Services Committee, I believe. Give us an assessment of the extent of the risk to U.S. national security of those S-400 Russian missiles being put into Turkey. We have heard that perhaps that really curtails, for example, our use of F-35s in the area.
Well, that's exactly right. So the S-400, of course, is the Russian anti-air defense system, and it could be used against our F-35s, and it's why we stopped the sale of F-35s to Turkey itself, because we don't need our aircraft being tested against or their defense system, the Russian defense system, tested against our top fighter jet. So that's part of that complicated relationship that we have with President Erdogan and Turkey. So the result, of course, is that a bunch of F-35s that were going to be sold to Turkey aren't being sold to Turkey. We hope now through the National Defense Authorization Act that we're able to utilize those jets in other places, including probably in our own Air Force.
And Senator, finally, if all that weren't complicated enough, the complications with Turkey go well back into the beginning of the 20th century with Armenians who were killed, and the question of whether it was genocide. There has been repeated attempts to declare it as genocide. That evidently has been stopped in part to make sure we don't drive Turkey away. Where are you on that issue?
Yeah, so last week I actually blocked the unanimous consent to that resolution on the floor. And the reason I did it was literally the day after President Trump got home from the NATO trip where he visited with President Erdogan specifically about genocide, specifically about the S-400. I support the resolution. I will vote for the resolution the next time it comes up. But I just felt like we need to get a full reading from the president's negotiations with President Erdogan before the engines of Air Force One were barely cooled down when the resolution was brought to the floor for unanimous consent. I think that it's a resolution that needs to pass. I think it will soon, and it certainly will with my support.
That's very helpful. Thank you, sir. That's Senator Kevin Kramer, Republican of North Dakota, coming to us from Capitol Hill. We turn now to Mark Crumpton for Bloomberg First Word News.
David, the House Judiciary Committee has rejected Republican Jim Jordan's amendment that would have eliminated the first article of impeachment against President Trump, which accuses him of abuse of power. The vote was 17-23 along party lines. It was the first vote on an amendment after about 3 hours of debate. At the end of the day, lawmakers will be asked to decide whether to send 2 articles of impeachment to the House floor for debate and vote. The president says the United States and China are very close to signing a big trade deal. He tweeted today, quote, "They want it and so do we." That contrasted with remarks he made last week that he liked the idea of waiting until after the 2020 elections here in the U.S. to sign a deal. There are expectations that a tariff increase planned for Sunday will be called off while those talks progress. Greenpeace activists scaled the European Union's new headquarters in Brussels today, unfurling a huge banner warning of a climate emergency. The demonstration came as the bloc's leaders gathered for the start of a 2-day summit focused on plans to combat global warming. The EU leaders are set to debate ways for the 28-nation bloc to become carbon neutral by 2050. 10 former National Football League players have been charged with defrauding a health care program run by the league. They include 5 former players on the Washington Redskins, including Clinton Portis and Carlos Rogers. The Justice Department says the players submitted nearly $4 million in false claims to the health care plan and received more than $3.4 million in payouts. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. David?
Thanks so much, Mark. Still ahead, there's gambling going on in Macau, at least for a win, with our stock of the hour up on good news about trade and about Macau. That's next. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio.
Imagine.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Some days life can get in the way of catching up on the news that moves your world. TuneIn is here to help. With live 24/7 coverage from CNN wherever you go on the TuneIn app, you can always find a slice of your schedule, however long, to check in on the biggest stories of the day.
Hell hath no fury. The president's counselor went on a rampage on a taped phone call with Washington Examiner reporter.
Search CNN on TuneIn to get the live news when it matters most.
Want TuneIn to remind you when the big NFL game is about to get underway? Be sure notifications are allowed.